Race fans, the 100% Cup Series welcomes you to Atlanta Motor Speedway, the 1.5-mile oval circuit where the driver's going to be duking it out, trying to get that win tonight. I'm Andre Graham Bush, joined alongside Andrew Clark and, of course, Carlos Costa, the man pushing the buttons, bringing all the action to your TVs and computers. Andrew, this is going to be one exciting race. I got to say, Atlanta's one of my favorite mile and a halves on this circuit. A lot of extreme conditions these drivers are going to be dealing with. Hot track temps, we can see it's 88 degrees out now, but it's probably going to get warmer as the day progresses. You know as well as I do, Andrew, a hot track is going to put some tire wear on these cars, get these guys slipping, sliding around, really fighting the cars. It's going to be a lot of fun. What are you looking forward to, Andrew?
Yeah, well, Atlanta's known for its tyre wear already, so add some heat into that, and it's just going to add heat into the racing as well, where it's a tight track and where drivers are telling us it's tough to overtake. Now, that usually brings one of two options. Either drivers are going to drive around in a train format and not overtake, or they're going to force the issue. And as we saw last week, when yellows come out, yellows breed more yellows. So we could see a race full of cautions, or we could see a single file race of cars running around. We just don't know yet, but either way, I'm sure there's going to be plenty of action.
Yeah, the crazy thing is, I think the drivers are just as in the dark as we are, Andrew. I don't think they really knew what to expect coming into tonight because a lot of these guys were really testing on their own for the most part, building their setups. But now they've got a ton of other cars on track. They're dealing with dirty air, and they're kind of fighting a very unique circumstance this week, and that is the aero package is slightly different from what we're going to see at most mile and a half. And that's due to a bit of a discrepancy between iRacing and the real-life race this week at Atlanta Motor Speedway. See, in real life, Atlanta has recently been repaved, and due to the new pavement, there's a lot of grip, which essentially means no off-throttle time. So to get the speeds down and to keep the cars a little bit more glued to the track, they put bigger spoilers on the car and took a little bit of horsepower away from them. But on iRacing, we got the new aero package with the big spoiler and a little bit less horsepower, but we did not get the repave. So we've got the big spoiler combined with the old track surface that's really rough. And from what I've heard in practice, these guys are having a lot of trouble passing one another, and they're really having to send big slide jobs and make big moves if they want to make something happen. So this race, like you said, Andrew, it could be single file. It could be three-wide racing the whole time. It really could go any number of ways.
Yeah, and really what it comes down to is buying the ticket to being in the front group during the final stage. So these drivers really need to run through cautiously through the first two stages, move up where they get the opportunity, but perhaps just maintain their tyres and their fuel as best they can and avoid danger.
Avoiding danger, that is the ticket, especially at Atlanta. These guys are going to be so close together, especially on the start of this thing. You want to put yourself in a good position. We've got about 40 seconds of practice left before we get into the grid. So let's go ahead and run through our starting grid before they finish up their practice. On the pole this week is going to be Dustin Hall in that number one machine. Dustin's had one heck of a season so far. He got a win already this year, had a bit of a rough week last week. Now he's right back on the ball trying to get another win here tonight. On the outside of Dustin, making up the other part of row one, is going to be Bryson Hicksonbaugh in that 63 machine. Behind them, you got Ralph Hutchinson and Matthew Long. Taylor Stout, Jason S. Taylor, Blake Giglio, Josh Ward. Behind them, you got Michael Christopher and Robert Tracy. Outside of the top 10 looking in is going to be Robert Anderson, Ryan Ducom, Damian Akrenza. There's no way I'm going to pronounce that correctly. I apologize. JC Gibson, Tanner Marty, Jack Durham, Mason Lowry, Lucas Hoitzma, Cameron Stone, Matthew Gaskins, Chad Sanner, Devin Medeiros, David Duke, Kyle Ammon, Alex Princeton, P25. From them on back, you've got Dakota Knoll, Tim Rail, Chad Edwards, Raymond Root, Randy Drumhiller, Sean O'Brien Jr., Dalton Mobley, Damaris Hickenbottom, Brandon Pierce, Preston McRae, Kevin Steele, Cody Bird, Ryan Samuelson, and the last two in line, we're not going to forget them, Patrick Muchet and Adam Benefield taking the provisional in that 83 machine. So we have a full 40-car field again this week. We've had a lot of entries so far in each race, and we did have a few drivers that did not qualify in tonight, that did try to post a lap. They tried to race their way in, just didn't quite make it. So competition getting more fierce every
Well, 40 cars
week.
starting, but 40 cars starting. I wonder how many of those will finish.
That's a good question. That is not one I'd want to make a bet on, I'll tell you that much. But among the notable absentees tonight is going to be Jonathan Delaney, a very fast driver this year. Hasn't finished outside the top 2 yet, but he will tonight. He had some prior real-life obligations, was unable to make the race, so this will be the first did not start for Jonathan Delaney of the year. Luckily, with the good runs he's had so far, I think he's put himself in a pretty good points position. He can kind of cushion the blow a little bit.
Well, drivers are lined up on the starting grid now, getting ready to get this race underway. How many laps are they going to do on a set of tyres here, Carlos? Andre?
Well, it really depends on the driver's setup. They can go about 67-ish laps on fuel, perhaps a little bit further if they really conserved. But the tire wear is going to get really, really extreme. So I would not be surprised to see some of these guys opt to pit 10, 15 laps before they really need to, if they need to split up the stage and just kind of get that tire wear. I think we're going to see them prioritize tires, but they're going to have to be tactical about it. They do have a tire set limit this week of, I believe, 9 sets total. 1 set on the car, 8 sets behind pit road, and that's going to be their total. They're going to have to make that last through the entire race. But the pace car is coming out of turn 4, and the field's going to be in the hands of Dustin Hall in that number 1 machine. When does he go? Right now. On the loud pedal, he's going to get a big jump on Bryson Nixonbaugh, and actually, for second place, Ralph Hutchinson's going to dive bomb it up the inside, make it too wide, and he's about to have some help from a teammate there, LDR, as Matthew Long in that 97 machine. He's going to drive down low, get a little bit of draft help maybe. Now they're going to single file out behind them. The next battle side by side was going to be between Josh Ward and Blake Giglio, but they solved that pretty quickly. And yeah, these guys getting sorted out pretty quick here, Andrew.
Yeah, and not looking to make any ridiculous moves early on, which is satisfying to see. We don't want to see too much carnage early on in the race. Just let them settle into a groove, find their pace, find their line, and then work up the field as the race develops.
Absolutely, you can't win it on lap 1. I think a lot of these guys know that, but we've already got a bit of a 3-car breakaway. We've got the leader Dustin Hall, as well as Bryson Nixonbaugh and Ralph Hutchinson. These 3 have kind of gotten away from the rest of the pack in just 1 lap. About a 10-car length gap back to that second pack, which is now being spearheaded by Long in that 97, but not without challenge. He's got the number 12 machine, Jason S. Taylor, down low on that white line, trying to make it happen. Now, from what I've heard and from what all the drivers have told me, the top line is the ticket, as we have a yellow flag. We've got a wreck already. Sounds like it may have involved the Morris Hickenbottom across the driver radio there. We're going to try and identify exactly what happened here.
We have a couple of cars on the sideways on the track there.
Randy Drumhiller among them in that Coleman machine there. A lot of damage to that blue car. Not quite able to make out the number. We're going to take a look at the 3-wide TV replay, see exactly how this transpired. So we got them side by side into 1 and 2. Ooh, just a snap loose out of the number 2 machine.
Yeah, he's done that without any help. Oh, and then he's brought the carnage with a couple of other cars hitting him as he was sliding down the track.
Yeah, Randy Drumhiller not expecting a car to be in the middle of the track there. Just a victim of circumstance. As the number 2 was on the brakes, he was trying to get it locked up, doing what he should do. But, I mean, you've got 20, 30 cars coming at you at 180 miles an hour plus. That's just a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, there's big damage there with those cars. I'd hate to see the repair time those guys are now facing.
For a lot of these guys, the repair time's probably 0. They're probably on their way to the hauler right now.
Oh, geez, that was a great view as he came out of that corner and just had nowhere to go, straight into him.
That's one of those incidents that makes you glad it's sim racing and not real life, because that was a hit.
So under caution, as we said before the race started, cautions breed cautions, and we expected there was either going to be a lot here or none, depending on how the drivers managed to find their way around the track. So an ominous start to proceedings here at Atlanta.
Yeah, definitely not inspirational for these drivers, I'd have to say. To see somebody get so loose as we ride along with Ryan Samuelson, this was his view of the incident. As he's coming through 1 and 2, a lot of smoke at the top of the track, and he makes the smart decision to dive down low, and he just barely squeaks by. What a wreck avoidance there by Samuelson. Actually may have gotten tagged a little bit by Netcode, as our producer pointed out there. But it didn't get wrecked and didn't get a whole lot of damage. So
No.
one of the lucky few in that incident.
So that breakaway pack that initially got themselves a bit of a gap, it's now gone. And I noticed in qualifying times there's a bit of a difference between our front runners and the guys at the back. So if we can avoid cautions, we could definitely see this race split into a number of different packs.
It definitely could. And you know what gets me really intrigued about this too is I think the drivers that we saw qualify really well are the drivers that have a short run setup. They're going to be blazing fast out of the gate, but being that fast is of course going to put more wear and tear on their car. And if we get a long green flag run, you might see that pack that broke away start to fall back to the field. And once that happens, you may see some long run heroes show up with a little bit less tire wear, a little bit fresher equipment underneath of them, and they may be able to get out front. And it's going to be a bit of a revolving door, because I know some of these guys definitely do have short run setups and some of these guys do have long run cars. So it'll be interesting, and it really depends on, like you said, if we can get the long green flag run or if we get a few more yellows. But ominous, as you said, I think that's a great term for the beginning of this race. Not inspirational in the slightest, but here we go. Pace car is going to make that hard left turn, and Dustin Hall again is going to be responsible for getting this field out of the gate. And I think just like the first time, he's not wasting a second. He's going to get on that loud pedal. And they're right there. But Bryson Hixenbaugh, he was ready for it, Andrew. Look at that, side by side.
Yeah, and the field really bunched up there as they took off. So Pace said go, and Hall and Hixenbaugh went, and then the field behind them really compressed, but starting to spread out a little bit now. Oh no, sorry, I'm watching a replay. I thought we had another caution there for a second. I was watching a replay of the last one on another screen. Never mind me.
Yeah, I've made that mistake a time or two. Looks like Ralph Hutchinson down low. He's trying to peek his nose down on that bottom lane, maybe try to get out of that dirty air that some of these drivers were complaining about in practice. But from what I've heard after the first few laps, a lot of these guys are going to want to migrate to the top. That's where the car is going to feel comfortable. As Jason S. Taylor, big loose coming out of turn 2, sliding down to the apron. He corrects it. Good counter steer. He's back on the racing surface. Nobody gets taken out. No worse for wear. What a save by that number 12. And all the while that's going on, we've got the 63 inching closer to our leader. 2-car breakaway up front. Dustin Hall still up front, but under fire from Bryson Hixenbaugh, trying to make something happen up on that high lane. And whoa, man, one of the LDR cars, I believe that's the 89 machine, getting a little bit sideways. He's able to correct it. I'll tell you what, we've been underway for 9 laps here, Andrew. We've seen 3 cars get loose. These guys are fighting it.
Yeah, absolutely. They're going pedal to the metal, and really Hall and Hixenbaugh at the moment out in front. They're in the best position. If they can just work together and keep increasing that gap that they currently have, they're going to be in a really safe position because they're out away from the carnage. They're away from any danger. They'll have clear track. So provided they don't fight each other, then those guys are really in the box seat at the moment.
Sorry to interrupt you there. There was a big moment there for Lucas Hoytsma in that 07 machine. He got completely sideways, maybe a little bit of contact with whoever was to his outside, but he also was able to get it corrected. And man, what a start to this race. These guys are really struggling with these cars getting loose and just kind of snapping around on them. And I got to wonder if it's because they built, we got a big wreck in turn 2.
Ooh. So lap 11 will bring out the second caution, and there are multiple cars in that as well.
Cody Bird.
We made a dire prediction earlier on, asking how many cars would finish the race. We're certainly going to get 2. Hixenbaugh can keep getting this gap, but let's follow this. All 2 cars, yeah, they've gone. One's helped the other straight into the wall there, and that's just created carnage behind them.
Just nowhere for any of these guys. You know, that is the worst place for a wreck to happen, too. I mean, if something happens on the straightaway, you have a little bit of freedom of movement. You can move low, you can move high. The car's going to respond to your inputs. But in the corner, you're kind of married to the line that you're running. It's hard to deviate. I mean, the momentum is carrying you on that line, and to move down low or to move up high isn't always as easy done as it is said. So when you have a wreck like this, really all you can do is stick to your line, try to slow up if you can, and hope for the best. But unfortunately for Kevin Steele here, it's right on board. He had a gap, and then that gap immediately closed, as it did for many drivers, including Cody Bird, and I believe that maybe the 83 machine of Adam Benefiel also involved. The 09 just with a wallop from Kevin Steele. That's unfortunate. But
Yeah, so there's some big repair jobs there too, as a couple of cars disappear off the track and putting it straight into the transporter.
Brandon Pierce also involved. You can see that 38 machine getting kind of tail happy as he got a little bit of help down the track, but not too much damage, so he should be all right. In fact, let's real quick pull in the crew chief for Brandon Pierce in the number 38. Let's have a word with Bryce Hoffman. Bryce Hoffman, you got a copy? You got a copy, Bryce?
Yeah, I got a copy.
Well, Bryce, it's been an eventful start to the race, that's for certain. It looks like one of your drivers, Brandon Pierce, got tagged in that wreck. How's his car looking? A lot of damage, or is he scot-free?
He's gonna be all right, but he's not gonna have any chance at really being super competitive tonight. RJ also got hit in that wreck, so SBR is looking a little beat up, to say the least.
Well, if it's any consolation, a lot of drivers are looking beat up, and it isn't just your team. What's the handling like out there for these guys? It looks like it's really loose, and it's kind of difficult to save these cars. Are they just fighting loose?
Yeah, most of these guys have set these cars up incredibly loose to handle the long runs, and apparently they didn't try running it in the short run, and they've been unable to handle it. So,
Bit of a crucial oversight, it sounds like. But looks like we're going to be going back green pretty shortly, so we'll put you back up with your team. And thanks for stopping in, Bryce.
yep.
So he'll be able to continue the race, Brandon Pierce will, but maybe not going to be super competitive, which, it didn't look like he got a whole lot of damage, and I think that kind of goes to show how important Aero is going to be at this track, because with that little bit of damage, if he feels like he's going to be that much off pace, I think Aero is going to be a huge factor.
Yeah, and it certainly goes to highlight the fact that perhaps Hall and Hixenbar are the ones that have gone with that setup for the short stints, because they are gapping the field whenever the green goes down. Perhaps the rest of the field have gone for those long stints. So it'll be interesting to see as this race unfolds now, and as the pace car pulls in, if they can gap out the rest of the field, then you would have to say that these guys have gone into the race with the attitude that there are going to be a lot of cautions, and they've set up accordingly and made the smart call so far.
Absolutely. I would say it's paying dividends right now, because with everything that's been going on, every single time they've been able to kind of keep themselves clean of it. And that's not to lack credit to the LDR guys behind them either. These guys at LDR, they've also kept their noses clean. Maybe not quite as fast as these two leaders so far, but it seems like they've been able to keep their cars under control. It doesn't look like they're fighting them quite as much. And as I'm watching Ralph Hutchinson under yellow right now, he's weaving back and forth. And to the viewers at home, if you don't know why he's weaving back and forth like that, he's getting heat in those tires. These cars have been incredibly loose, and if you're on cold tires, that's going to make it even worse. So if you can weave back and forth, get some heat in those tires, maybe build that pressure up, then when we get this race underway, the car is going to be a little bit more stable. And stability, I think, is the ticket. They say loose is fast, but I've always said, yeah, loose is fast, but you got to be there at the end to win it. So if these guys can maybe get a little bit of stability and get that car under control, that'll be very, very helpful. But Bryson Hixenbaugh, Dustin Hall, same story we've seen a few times tonight. Pace car pulls off. Dustin Hall, as he's done so many times, is going to lead the pack to the green flag once again. And we got a challenge for second place as Taylor Stout's going to move to the inside of the 63.
Yeah, well, with the fast line being on the outside, this battle will ensue for a couple of laps, I would imagine, before we have a... Oh, here we go, Hixenbaugh's back now, so he's got second place back. What I was just going to say too was the weaving Red Bull Racing in Formula One have done a lot of research on that, and actually does nothing to the tyre pressures or the tyre heat. Accelerating and braking does, but weaving back and forth is really just something to entertain the drivers.
That's interesting. I've always thought it made some difference, but it could be one of those things that, maybe it's a bit of a superstition, or maybe what do they call that? Oh shoot, what am I can't think of the word, but yeah, either way, it could just be something that they do. And like you said, it's to entertain themselves more than anything. Placebo, yes. Carlos gave me the word
There
placebo
we
effect.
go.
You weave
Yes.
back and forth. You think it's doing something, but maybe not helping out a whole lot. But
No,
I'll
no.
tell you who didn't need to weave back and forth, Andrew. It's that number one car, because again, he's running that high line. He's pulling away from the field a little bit here, and out of all these drivers, he's looking pretty comfortable.
Look, he is really high compared to Hixabar and the rest of the field there, so maintaining speed as he goes around those corners, and would be looking after the tyres too, without certainly a lot better than the guys on the title line. So although might be running a setup for short stints, he's certainly looking to make sure those tyres last as long as possible.
That could be, of course, when you do take the lower line. You're right. You're kind of cranking on that steering wheel. You're skidding the tires a little bit more, pinching the geometry of the car, and that's going to wear those tires pretty quick. Whereas if you're up top, the car can rotate a little bit more free. It doesn't need quite as much input on that steering wheel. So if these guys can navigate to the top and make it work, that'll be extremely helpful for the long run. And now that we've got the field thinned out a little bit, some of these cars still on pit road, less traffic in general to deal with, I think the likelihood of a long green flag run is just going to go up from here.
Yeah, well, as there are less drivers on the track, then yeah, you're going to get a greater likelihood of cleaner racing. But they still need to get to that final stage, and these guys don't need to be pushing it early on. They just need to make it through to that final stage, be in the pointy end of the field, and then they feel free to start pushing. At the moment, it's just going to create problems for themselves and other drivers if they start forcing the issue early on in the race.
Absolutely. And another reason they may want to take it easy and be a little patient is because they can't make it to the end of this stage without pitting. This is a 105 lap first stage. The stage caution will be thrown at the end of lap 105. And as I already mentioned at the top of the broadcast, they got about 67 laps in the tank, perhaps a little bit more if they're conservative. But there's just no way they're going to make it to 105. However, they do have a little bit of leeway, given that they can make it well over halfway through the stage. Is the 89 Taylor Stout a little bit loose? He's down on the apron. See if he can remerge safely. But as I was saying, they have a little bit of leeway. They could split this stage in half if they wanted to, pit right at lap 52, 53, or they could run this tank dry and try to get it a little bit closer to the end. And honestly, I could see drivers going with either strategy, because they know that we've had a lot of yellow flags, and nobody wants to be the driver who pit a little bit too early and got trapped a lap down when an unfortunate caution came out.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to be pitting under green, but I'd be, as soon as a caution comes out at any point after lap 40, I'd be looking to head into those pits, fill the tank. Because as luck would have it, if you didn't pit under caution at lap 40, you might not get another one till lap 70, and then you're forced to pit under green.
Exactly. A lot of things that these drivers have to consider. And, no matter how much they plan it out, no matter how much they think about their strategy, in a race like this, everything that they planned on, everything that they planned for could go completely the opposite direction, and they find themselves starting from square one. It's been one chaotic race so far, and I think these drivers know that. So it may come down to luck at the draw as we have a car sideways on the back straightaway. That is the number 20 machine, Devin Medeiros.
We may get away with no caution yet. We've got a breakaway pack now of 5 that moved away from the rest of the field now. So a breakaway pack of 2 has now grown into a breakaway pack of 5. So Hill and Hixenbar dragging a few drivers along with them.
Yeah, that's the power of the draft. If you can stay with the leaders and have a setup that's just good enough to keep up with them, they can kind of pull you around the track. And as an added benefit, you're also saving a little bit of fuel in doing so. But I'm watching this 54, and I really am impressed with the speed he has. I think right now he may be faster than our 2 leaders, but he's just looking for the opportunity to pass. As we mentioned, the aero push or the aero tight that these guys are going to be experiencing is pretty severe, so it's kind of difficult to build up the momentum to make a pass, as Hutchinson gets a little loose out of turn 2, but he's able to correct it. It's just going to be a matter of waiting for that door to open and making a move for the 54. And with him getting sideways out of 2, I think that's another point that I should bring up. Sometimes these cars get sideways and it doesn't look significant and it doesn't look like a whole lot on TV, but with iRacing's current tire model, what happens is that little bit of a slide will heat up your tires incredibly. And so for the next couple sets of corners, your car is going to be a lot looser. You're not going to be able to carry the speed that you once could, and you have to take it easy until those tires have cooled down. And that's exactly what happened to that 54. You can see he was on the bumper of Hutchinson. As soon as he had that slide, he lost that pace, got passed by the number 99 machine, and now he had to fall back in line. So the more these guys slide around, it's a domino effect. It's just going to keep building up that tire temp. So they got to make sure they take it easy.
Absolutely. Once you've got tyres that are overheated, it feels like your rubber has just turned to jelly, and you cannot hold that thing to the road. But at the moment, Hall is doing all of the work out in front. If I was one of the four drivers following him, I'd be more than happy to let him lead and do the work, save the tyres, save the fuel in behind him, and get a good opportunity to jump him in the pits with less time stationary, and just allow him to do all the work at the moment.
I agree 100%. This second pack behind the leaders is currently being spearheaded by Cameron Stone in that 57 cookout machine. And these guys have some pretty good speed. I'm looking at the lap time comparisons. Last time around for Cameron Stone, it was a 31.7. And for the last car in line in the lead pack, it was a 31.8. So actually, very slowly, this second pack may be reeling in the leaders.
Yeah, they have been lap after lap recently. They've been closing that gap down. So our leading group is about to get significantly bigger.
And I know Cameron Stone is one of those drivers who does tend to prefer a long run setup, so I would not be surprised if this stays green to see that car come to life. But man, what a battle up front. Look at this. Bryson Hutchinson under attack. He's got the 99 and the 54 side by side behind him, both trying to overtake from various points on the track. The 99 getting good runs up high, the 54 getting a massive slingshot down low. Bryson has no choice but to make that car as wide as he can to try and defend second place. At one point, Bryson had to move up and get side by side with the leader, and I think that was less because he wanted to make the pass and more so because he had cars pressuring him from behind. So this battle for the lead's heating up.
Yeah, the red mist really does come out, doesn't it, as soon as you get behind the wheel, and you can say to yourself before a race, hey, I just need to settle into a groove, follow the car in front, do all the things that I need to do to make it fast for the entire 105 laps. But as soon as you have someone try to overtake you, the red mist hits and you go, nah, this is my spot. I'm keeping it. And exactly. He really doesn't need to battle and defend second place on lap 32. He can let them lead. That's fine. Because there's another 70 odd laps to go in this stage.
Absolutely. And you know, what I'm noticing is the high line is starting to come in a little bit more. Bryson was able to defend down low early in this stint, but now as the laps wind down, the tires begin to wear. That outside line is kind of making him look like he's sitting still. We had the 99 get around him now, Ralph Hutchinson. That's going to cycle him back to fourth. Now he's got the 16 down low. So the question is, does Bryson adapt? Does he move to the high line now that he's able to slot up there? And does he kind of give up on that low line that he was running earlier? It seems like that's what he's doing, is he did run the high line in 1 and 2 there. But again, 3 and 4 are very different corners, so we'll see what he does here. Looks like he's running mid to low, whereas everybody else is moving up high. I'm not sure I understand the dedication to the bottom line. I feel like maybe that's holding him back a little bit, but I mean, if that's what he set the car up to do and that's where he's comfortable, it could just be a matter of choice.
Well, there's another element coming into play now, and that's lapped traffic.
That it is. Couple cars moving out of the way up high as the 99 has actually made the pass for the lead, it would seem, but Dustin Hall trying to slingshot back around him on the inside. Side by side for the lead. Ryan Ducombe, Dustin Hall coming out of turn 4 to the tribal. There's going to be a little bit of contact. The 99 scrapes the outside wall, I believe. The number 1 lifts and concedes the position. I'm sure he didn't intend for that contact. That's why he lifted and said, all right, sorry about that, take it. But now things go from bad to worse for Dustin as he's got Ralph Hutchinson making a dive bomb down low. Looks like it might actually stick, and he's going to be in position to attack again in 3 and 4.
Yeah, they're just starting to, there's a bigger group now, but they are just starting to break away and form a lead pack. So certainly the guys out front have got good pace, and we could see the drivers that have set up for a longer stint as being the ones that are coming through now. But they really don't need to battle as much as we love seeing the action. The strategy really at this point is to get your car to lap 105, or at least to lap 40 where you can pit without any damage and remaining in that front pack.
And we talked a little bit about Cameron Stone running faster laps than the leaders consecutively. Well, here he is. He's with the lead pack and in tow. He's brought the number 70, Michael Christopher, as well as the number 97 of Matthew Long. He was up front earlier in the race, fell back a ways. Now he's back with this pack. That 57 machine, it's on fire, quite literally and figuratively, as he's got flames on that machine. He is reeling these guys in. He may be in contention for a top 5.
Yeah, well, he's going around on the high line as well. Certainly somewhere in between a high and a low line, so finding some middle ground, and perhaps that's where the pace is at the moment. Choosing the low line there through that corner. But Hall and Hixenbar, who have early on in the race dominated and were able to get out, have now fallen back to 3rd and 5th consecutively. So certainly the guys with alternative setups, I would imagine, are the ones that are coming through the pack.
Absolutely. And, you know, we talked about it at the start of the broadcast. If we go green, I kind of expected Dustin Hall in the 63 to kind of fall back a ways, because being fast on a short run's great, but it's not really sustainable, especially at a track like this. So as they continue on in this stint, I just kind of expected that speed to fade away, and it has. But we've got a battle for the lead side by side. Ralph Hutchinson down low, Ryan Ducombe up high, and he's going to make the crossover. Now swapping positions, he's going to move down low, door to door into 3 and 4. Bryson Nixonbaugh lurking right behind in the catbird seat. 99 trying to make it stick as the 54 did, but not able to carry quite as much momentum. They're going to single file out of turn 4, but look at this, a run by the 99, maybe? No. His momentum stalls, and that's going to give the 54 the solo lead.
As we tick on to lap 40 now, you would say pit window is open for these guys. You're never actually praying for a caution, but we've got some pit stops happening. So a few drivers electing to pit under green here.
And it sounds like Mason Lowry is the only one to have come down pit road, I believe is what my producer said. So it's been a slow start to the pit window, but I think as we continue, we're going to see him peel off. And again, I think everybody's going to have slightly different strategies. I don't think we're going to see a massive clump of cars come down all at once, but rather I think we're going to see 1, 2 at a time as they kind of start to concede that maybe we're not going to get a yellow, maybe I'm not going to get trapped a lap down. But again, it's going to be a gamble.
Yeah, well, this is where patience will really win out here. So you can go in and pit early on lap 40, but then if we get a caution on lap 45, it's really cost you a lot of time. So the guys that have can show a bit of patience here and are able to make their tyres last without costing them too much time, then they can go for as long as possible and hopefully just wait for that caution to do their pit stop while everyone else has had to do it under green.
Another battle for the lead. Bryson Hixenbaugh side by side with Ralph Hutchinson. Ralph ran the low line in turn 1, whereas Bryson ran the outside. That allowed him to get a huge run. Then in 3 and 4, having to move down low, that momentum stalled out. Now he's going to be single file for second again. And I'm curious to see what Ralph does. He saw the run that the 63 got through 1 and 2, and he's learned from it. He migrated up to the top, and he's taken the lane away from the 63. But even in doing so, the 63 just seems to have a lot more speed in 1 and 2, whereas when they get to 3 and 4, watch that gap extend from about a car length to maybe 2 or 3, as the 54 just carries so much speed out of these 2 turns.
Yeah, and Hall taking a very narrow line there, so he's gone from a high line to a low line strategy on his car. Hall and Hixenbaugh are actually starting to pick their pace up again now.
Yeah, they could have just been conserving, perhaps, when they started to fall through the field. Again, he's going to attempt to move down low. It's a mirror image of his attempt a few laps ago, down on the white line. But it seems in 3 and 4, the bottom is not the place to be, as Ralph is going to get a huge run again. but man, is he clear? It looks like he may not be clear as they work their way through the trouble. Now he's clear, but Bryson is right on the bumper coming into 1 and 2, and that is important because if you get on somebody's bumper, you don't necessarily have to touch them. You just get right up against there. It completely changes the airflow, takes the air off their spoiler, gets them loose, and forces them to take it easy with the throttle. And that's something that Bryson could keep in mind, something he could use to his advantage if he's going to try to make the pass. But you've talked a lot about patience, Andrew, and it could be that Bryson is perfectly content here in second. As we approach the pit window, there's no reason to pass a guy on track and use up all your equipment when you're just going to be coming down pit road anyway.
Yeah, exactly right. So play the strategy game here and look after your car, look after your tyres, save on fuel, and make sure that you're still at the pointy end of the field. But this lap traffic could certainly throw a spanner in the works here for these guys, because they're coming around catching up another one here. And the front group has actually started to spread out a bit now. So where it was 5 cars bumper to bumper, we've actually got Hutchinson and Hixenbaugh have actually got themselves a little bit of a gap over Ducombe and Christopher.
Oh man, Bryson gets big loose. He used the lap cars as a pick. He got to the inside of Ralph, forced him to stay pinned behind a slower car, but he had to take a very shallow entry into the corner. That got the car sideways, and that put Ralph right back on his bumper. So the battle went from, I would say, both drivers kind of content where they were to now duking it out for position. I think that 54 might want that lead back, because he's going to stay glued to the bumper of the 63 coming into 1 and 2. And every single time, these guys have been running wildly different lines through the corner. And again, they do, as they completely diverge here. We got the 54 down low, the 63 on the wall. And man, that 54, he can use that low line, I think, better than anybody I've seen so far tonight, Andrew. Everybody else, when they go to that low line, they immediately lose 3, 4, maybe even 5 car lengths. But the 54 seems to be able to maintain his momentum. And I'd have to imagine that speed comes at the cost of stability.
Well, perhaps, but I would say he's avoiding the dirty air as well when he goes low. So I would imagine that if Hixenbaugh went low, he would go high just to avoid the dirty air that Hixenbaugh would be giving him. So look, it could be a strategy that his car's set up for the low line. It could be just that he wants to avoid dirty air during the corners so that he can maximise the grip that he's getting from his aero.
That's another good point. Indeed, dirty air is definitely something these guys want to steer clear of. If you can get out of the lane and make sure the leader doesn't take away your line and your aero, then that's what you're going to want to do. Here he goes again, down to that white line. And again, so much momentum he's able to carry. It's really impressive. 63, of course, is going to get a bit of a slingshot out of the corner here using that added momentum. And all these guys duking it out up front is just allowing the cars further back to close in. We've got Ryan Ducombe inching back towards these guys, maybe trying to lead a few more laps.
Yeah, well, lap 50 now, where that pit window is starting to close up. So these guys really need to look at taking on tyres and fuel pretty soon. When Hutchinson pulls the trigger, it'll be interesting to see what everyone else does, assuming that he's the first one to pull the trigger here, because everyone seems to have settled into a groove at the moment. They're familiar with the track, they're familiar with their car. We're probably less likely now to see a yellow, so drivers are going to be forced to pit under green, and who in this first group is going to be the first one to pull the trigger, and then will they all follow after that?
Cameron Stone working his way down pit road. He's got Devin Medeiros ahead of him as well. So those two trying to get the undercut. And I would say the undercut, as long as it stays green, is a viable strategy. To give an idea of how much slower old tires are than fresh ones, on lap 1, most of these drivers were running about 31 flat. Now these guys are running anywhere between 32 ones to 32 fours up front. So we've lost a little over a second, about 1.2, 1.3 seconds, depending on the driver, and that's only going to continue to deteriorate. The lap times are going to get slower and slower, so an undercut could be the move to make.
Well, that is significant when you're talking 2.5 second gap between first and fifth. If you're into the pits, you only need 2 laps and you've moved up 5 or 6 places. So, yeah, very significant undercut.
And Cameron, knowing where he was in the field, he was back there in about 5th or 6th when he dropped down to pit road. You're exactly right. All he needs is a couple laps. If these guys stay out, and it appears that they are, that could move him up. Now, of course, that's going to come at a cost later because as the race progresses, he'll be on the oldest tires, and the cars behind him will be on slightly fresher tires. And at that point, he's going to have to try to just hold them off until everybody hits that tire wear plateau where it kind of evens out after a certain point. But that's getting ahead of ourselves because right now, this is the longest green flag run we've had, and everybody's just really scrambling to try and figure out strategy because you got to think it throws the drivers off when the race starts out one way, caution after caution after caution, and then all of a sudden we get this long green flag run. They don't know what to expect.
Yeah, well, as a driver, I mean, this is what they want. They just want to be able to drive the car. They don't want to be stopping and starting all the time. So this is what they've set their cars up for, most of them, to go around and do 105 laps in the first stage, not do 5 stages of 20 laps split up by cautions. So this is certainly what they want. And when you start having cautions, you have to reset the mind every time. So now that they've had this long run, they're certainly in a groove. The mind is switched on. They've got a good feel for the car, a good feel for the track. The track is going to rubber up. It's going to get even quicker for them as the tyres rubber down. And then when they come on, when you come off worn tyres and go on to fresh tyres, wow, it feels like you're on a rocket ship. And when you're talking a second a lap difference, it certainly doesn't take long to pick your way through the field with these guys.
And it's scary sights from the hood of the number 57 as we rode on board. He had Taylor Stout a little bit sideways down on the apron as we have somebody killing a cone out there. Somebody call the cops because that cone has been pretty well destroyed. But Cameron Stone, despite navigating a gaggle of lap traffic, he was actually closing in on the leaders by about 0.8 per lap. So exactly what you were talking about, Andrew. Massive, massive significance to these lap times. And I would not be surprised if Cameron Stone cycles out much further ahead than he was. But man, what a wad of cars here. I mean, how do you even navigate something like that?
Yeah, look, the dirty air for these guys that are second, third and fourth row back on that group is going to be significant. I hope they're on fresh tyres because it's the only thing that would be keeping them to the track at the moment.
Especially when a few of these cars are damaged. So, I mean, they're already kind of aero deficient. Ooh, Ryan Samuelson loose out of turn 2. One of the cars that is damaged. It's just going to get more and more difficult when you have cars down low, up high. You get boxed in. You're already fighting a car that's damaged. And, man, I got to imagine some of those guys were just white-knuckled on the wheel, just gripping that thing.
Hutchinson into the pits. Be interesting to see where he comes out in comparison to the drivers that pitted earlier on.
And I just heard on the driver radio that Bryson Hixenbosch should be coming in this time. He did take low in 3 and 4. He is slowing down, so he'll be getting that car serviced. Yep. Now this is where we see who made the right move, Andrew, because we got Cameron Stone, who pitted almost 10 laps ago, versus these guys who now will have fresher tires, but they're going to have one heck of a gap that they got to try to make up.
Well, Stone is in 9th, and he's second place out of the drivers that have pitted at the moment. So where he is, and now he's first. He's just overtaken Hutchinson.
Now the game of defense starts for Cameron Stone as the number 1 and the number 63 get jacked up on both sides. 4 fresh Goodyears for these drivers and some fuel. And now the chase is on. These guys got to try to close that gap. And they got a little while to do it. I mean, we've got about 45 laps-ish left in the stage. But I tell you what, at a track like this, 45 laps goes by in the blink of an eye. Speaking of going by in the blink of an eye, look at that. Cameron Stone already around the 63. And the 63 is not up to speed yet. So this is going to be a huge gap. And the short run speed may have paid off for that 57.
Yeah, absolutely. The undercut has really paid off for him here. We've still got a few cars to pit. So they're doing a really long run here as we start lap 62. So they're going to have extremely fresh tyres towards the end, but I don't know that that's going to serve a significant advantage for them because Stone is going to have fantastic track position.
And clean air is so important. Even if he does have slightly more worn tires and he loses a little bit of momentum versus the guys behind him who have fresher tires, just the sheer fact of putting them in dirty air may be enough to equalize it.
Yeah, well, I can't see the gap at the moment that exists between Stone and Hutchison. But if he can maintain a decent gap there without allowing Hutchison to really come back, then all he has to do is put his head down, drive his own lines, look after his tyres, and stage 1 victory could be his for the taking.
It absolutely could be, but he is losing time massively to the cars behind. They've closed in. It looks like a few tenths every single lap, and that's the difference. I mean, Cameron Stone, just slightly older tires. You know, we're not talking anything massive, but at a track like Atlanta with this old surface, how abrasive it is, how worn out it is, and how hot it is, just a few laps is going to put a lot of strain on those tires. And you're going to find yourself slowing down pretty quickly, and that's what's happened to this 57. He has Ralph Hutchinson right on his bumper, navigating lap traffic. Not sure how well he's going to be able to defend, but if he uses this lap traffic to his advantage, it may preserve that lead for just a few more seconds at least.
Yeah, how aggressively is he going to defend that position? Because we still have 40 laps left in this stage, so if he's going to aggressively defend that position, we could see another caution come out.
We absolutely could. And, you know, if I'm Cameron Stone, as he gets overtaken here by the 54 and the 63, I think we both saw the 57 has a strong long run car. He was coming to life at the end of that stage, or that stint. So now, as he's getting overtaken, he knows these guys have fresher tires, but in the back of his mind, he's probably thinking, all right, you guys go now, but in about 15 to 20 laps, I'm going to have a better car, and I'm going to be right back there with you. So that could kind of help him to be a little bit more patient.
And really needs his guy on the mic to be reminding him of that, so that the red mist doesn't take over and force an unfavourable outcome on the track for him.
I tell you what, the guy on the mic for that team is who we talked to earlier, Bryce Hoffman, and he's kind of acting as crew chief / spotter / moral coach for all 4 SBR drivers. And let me tell you, that is not a job that I envy. Those drivers over at SBR, they can get a little bit rowdy during a race. They can get a little bit overly excited, so to say. And you got poor Bryce Hoffman up in the booth trying to keep these guys calm, and he does a good job of it. But man, oh man, it's always a great opportunity whenever I get to sit in their chat and listen in.
Just doing one driver is a full-time job. I can't imagine what it'd be like looking after 4.
And not 4 calm drivers either. That's what makes it more interesting. But SBR, they have a lot of fun. They love what they do, and they get a little hot-headed during the race. But man, they'll be the first one to joke around and laugh about it after the race with everybody in the motor coach area. Yeah, this whole roster, everybody in this league, you know, it really is one big family. And I think what happens on the track kind of stays on the track, and that's one of the things that makes it so great. But I tell you what, Cameron Stone falling back a ways, whereas we've got Bryson Hicksonbaugh, Ralph Hutchinson starting to pull away. And it'd be in their best interest to get as far away as possible, because they know they've got better short run speed. If this green flag continues, they may be ran down from behind. If they can build up a safe cushion now, that may kind of help them later on. Coming through 1 and 2, it seems like these guys continuing to run separate lines, just like you said, Andrew, trying to stay in that clean air.
Yeah, and look, Hutchinson and Hicksonbaugh are really out on their own at the moment. So able to have clean track, clean air, run their lines, and just put down tidy lap after tidy lap, avoid the trouble. Got a couple of drivers in front of them, but I would imagine they're expecting to pit sometimes towards the end of this stage, because they won't have the tyres or the fuel to finish it. And as one of them pulls into the pits now. So Taylor leading on the track, but he'll still have to pit again, which will hand over the lead to Hutchinson and Hicksonbaugh as those two just travel around together.
Yeah, and I think a lot of these drivers that were kind of holdouts there, that were waiting as long as possible to pit, they were really hoping for a caution, you know, to try to get that track position, trap a few drivers a lap down. And that's a strategy that you can play, but it always comes at a risk, because this is always a possible reality where we don't get that yellow flag, things stay green. And now it's going to come at a heavy, heavy price for Jason S. Taylor as he has stayed out so long now that when he pits, he will be a lap or possibly more down, as the drivers on the fresh tires have pretty much unlapped themselves. They're only about 13 seconds back, and Taylor has yet to even make his way down pit road. So a bit of a disastrous strategy call, but that's oval racing. You can't plan for everything. All you can do is stick to a strategy and hope that the cards fall in your favor, and sometimes they don't. But the other nice thing about oval racing is they're long events. We got 325 laps total tonight. We've only clocked off about 73 of them, so a lot of racing left tonight. And if you make a mistake early on, you got plenty of time to make up for it later.
Yeah, they just flew past Taylor then like he was standing still. The extra grip they're getting from these new tyres is really benefiting them. It's certainly more than a second a lap now between them, I would imagine.
Oh, it's got to be in excess of a second. You're absolutely right. Just a quick update on a couple of drivers that have been involved in some of the incidents prior to right now. We got Chad Edwards and Dakota Knoll taking their car behind the wall. They have officially retired from the event. So unfortunate that their nights ended so early. I talked to Chad before the race, and I got to say he was not really looking forward to this event. This is a very treacherous track. The setup to be fast is just so on edge. He told me he didn't really get it figured out. He wasn't too confident, and it's unfortunate that the wreck he got caught up in wasn't of his own making. It was just kind of victimless circumstance again. But yeah, unfortunate end to both of those drivers' nights, and we've got even more cars on pit road trying to salvage their car and maybe come out and try to get a few extra points.
Yeah, well, Hutchinson and Hickson are at the moment holding a 3-second lead over Ducombe, and these guys are starting to battle a little bit at the moment. So 30 laps to go until the end of stage one. They were working together for quite a few laps, but just saw a bit of an overtake, and they're now taking alternative lines. We could see a Ducombe come back into this battle and become a three-way battle for the podium through stage one if these guys keep battling each other.
And another attempt is underway. Bryson's going to get down to the driver's side door of the 54. He entered the corner a little bit high. He tried to pinch the 54 to the middle line, and it did work, but he got a little unsettled doing it. Taking that shallow entry has been a bit of a nightmare for Bryson all night long. It seems like his car likes to enter high, arc it down into the corner, whereas when he enters on that white line, all that weight shifts, the momentum just kind of throws him around, and it's difficult to keep under control. So he's not going to be successful in that overtake attempt. But like you said, he's got just under 30 laps left to try to make a few more swings at it and get that stage win.
Yeah, and look, Ducombe is slowly bringing down that gap. I don't know that it's enough at the moment. He needs these guys to keep battling. But Ducombe is also by himself, so he's 3.3 seconds to the rear of these guys now, but he's over a second clear of Long. So he's got clear track at the moment and is able to just put down clean lines and do it unhindered.
Yeah, the gap last time around was 3.2 from Ryan Ducombe to Ralph Hutchinson, and this time around it was actually 3.4, so it looks like Ryan Ducombe might have lost a little bit of speed, possibly at the hands of lap traffic. I did see him get kind of tangled behind, not contact or anything like that, but he just got stuck behind a lap car, and that's going to hinder his progress. But I think he does have a car that could potentially reel these guys in, especially if they continue to slow each other down, battle side by side, kind of take away each other's lines, which I fully expect these guys to do. These guys are not going to play nice. Even if they've been playing nice so far, we're getting close to the end of the stage, and there is points on the line. And in a overarching season, every single point counts, and these guys will race like their life depends on it for that one extra bonus point.
And let's not forget about Stone either, who's currently in fifth. We know he pitted earlier, but if he does have a car that's set up for the longer runs, then really now is when his car will start coming into its own. And he's 6 seconds to the rear of Hutchison at the moment. But we'll just watch his progress over the next 25 laps and see if he can move up a position or two.
Yeah, he could definitely potentially catch up to Long in that 97 car. He's not too far off. Whether or not he gets up to these leaders, we'll have to wait and see. But up front, the battle for the lead continuing, and it's about to get a lot more interesting because we've got 4, possibly even 5 cars that are going to be single file in front of these drivers. And again, these lap cars, they're going to do everything they can to keep everything cordial and let these leaders go. But dirty air is such a big factor that, you know, just having these cars in front of you is going to be enough to throw the handling of your car off. And what's worse is, especially with these big spoilers, you don't necessarily need to be close to the car in front of you to feel the ill effects. You could be within 1 or 2 seconds even, and still your car is not going to handle as good as it would have otherwise. So this battle for the lead is getting real interesting as they close in on the 38.
Yeah, the slipstream effect here with these cars, they punch a big hole in the air, and the speed that they're going, the slipstream effect certainly is a lot longer than other forms of racing where the cars are more aerodynamic, such as open wheeler cars. These guys punch a big hole in the air. When you're standing beside the track, you know, you can be 10 meters back from the track and you feel the wind go past you as these guys punch through it.
Oh yeah, there's a famous video that went viral a while back from Daytona Superspeedway where there's a bucket sitting on the bottom portion of the grandstand, just a plastic bucket. And as the field goes by, that bucket gets hurled just by the air itself about 13 sections down the bleachers. So you're absolutely right. The hole that they punch through the air, the wind that they move is absolutely absurd almost. It's incredible to think that these guys could even race within proximity of each other with the turbulent air that they create. But, you know, again, the ill effects of it are so easily perceivable and so noticeable from the cockpit of the car. And the lap traffic, they were able to navigate the cars that were in front of them pretty well. We had some of them move down low, some of them move up high. And through it all, it looked like Ralph was able to hold the lead. Bryson's able to stay in second. But this isn't over, man. These guys are so close in pace. And this is the kind of battle I love. Where right now, if you were to ask me who has the better car, the 54 or the 63, I couldn't tell you.
No, it's hard to say what's going on in the minds of these drivers at the moment. You know, we're down to 20 laps to go until the end of stage one. So is Hixenbaugh really working to get in front of Hutchinson here, or is he happy to follow around for a few more laps? Is he happy to take second in stage one? Or does he really want to just sit behind him and push in the last 5 or 6 laps to get that stage one victory? So what's going on in the mind of these drivers at the moment is really going to dictate what happens over these next 20 laps.
And I'll tell you, I think you're onto something there, Andrew, because Bryson is, I would say, one of the more patient drivers in the league, especially when he's got a good car. You know, right now he's in second place. He's led some laps. He knows he's got a car that could challenge for the lead. And with Bryson, just knowing that his car is good, that's usually enough for him to say, okay, I'm going to ride where I'm comfortable. We're not going to push it. And really, he flips the switch with about 40 to 30 to go when he's got a good car like this. And the rest of the time, he may just be riding around. And when he makes these overtake attempts, it may not be out of a place of aggression, you know, out of saying, I want to try to get the lead, but rather he gets a good run. He sees the doors open and he says, all right, well, we're going to make a swing at it, but we're not going to do anything too aggressive. And if we get the lead, then great, which he actually has through 1 and 2. He's able to dive down low, slide up in front of the 54. But it's now the crossover move. Hutchinson down low, 1 lap car up high. They're going to be 3 wide momentarily as they get through the tri-oval, possibly right out of turn 4. Who is going to be able to get the advantage here? 3 wide through the tri-oval. The 5 car has a little bit more momentum than the leaders probably would have liked to see, but he is able to let these guys by clear. And let me tell you, number 5, Kyle Hammond, I do not envy the position that he was in right there. When you see the leaders coming up behind you side by side, there's almost nothing that you can do. You just got to stick to that wall and hope that they're able to get around you cleanly. And I'll tell you what, Hammond did a phenomenal job right there.
Yeah, look, you just need to stay out of their way as best you can. You don't want to be ruining anyone else's race, and these guys clearly have pace over him. So, yeah, done a fantastic job to stay out of their way and allow them to just continue to run their race. But Long is actually that may have been due to the overtake with the lap traffic there, but Long has actually brought in a bit of time over the last lap or two.
Yeah, he has closed in a little bit. Cameron Stone actually has fallen back. Last time we checked in on him, he was 6.0 seconds back. Now it's 7.3 from Bryson Hixenbaugh in the lead. So falling back a little bit, but yeah, Long reeling them in another 10th that time. It was 4 seconds last lap. This lap is 3.9. So slowly but surely reeling them in. Not sure he's going to have enough time to get to them, but depending on lap traffic and how much they battle, it is a possibility. We got some more lap traffic ahead. Cody Bird. Now, that is teammates for Bryson Nixonbaugh. So I know that if it comes down to it, Cody Bird is going to choose the lane of the driver who's not his teammate. He's going to put Ralph in dirty air if he can. So that's not going to be too much of an advantage for that 54. We're going to see how it all plays out. Coming through 1 and 2, getting ever closer to Cody Bird. They're going to be there by the time they get to 3 and 4.
Yeah, they're coming around with a lot of pace. That lap car that they got a lap or two ago is sticking to the rear of them too. So they're dragging him along, but easily around. That time, no issues at all again. So the lap traffic certainly playing the courteous game here today and not wanting to cause any further issues. Perhaps he can latch onto the back of this 3-car train and follow them around for the next 13 laps.
That's a possibility. He's got some damage that may slow him up, but sometimes the draft can compensate for that damage, as he has not fallen too far back yet. But you're right, they are dragging Kyle Hammond behind him, and Kyle's doing a heck of a job keeping pace with these leaders. And this is always, I think, a good experience for these drivers to be able to follow along with the leaders, some of the best in the league, and to watch what they do, to see what lines they're running, try to figure out what they're doing differently from you, because you can kind of bank that information for later in the race. And when it comes down to it, you can use it for yourself and maybe improve as the race goes on.
Yeah, and the gains that Long was making have certainly ceased. So he's almost back out to 4 seconds now. I would imagine the gains were due to perhaps some lap traffic. So certainly down to a 2-car race now for stage 1.
And it looks like Ralph is maybe not as patient to stay in second as the 63 was. He's making lunges every corner, and he's entering right on the quarter panel. So he's got a very fast car. I think with how much speed he's able to carry on the bottom, an overtake is definitely possible. Right on the bumper, coming into 3 and 4. You're going to see that 54 move down low. The 63 is going to stay mid. And as they work their way through the corner, look at that center speed out of the 54. That's been his strong suit all night long. Just so fast through the center. The car is so free, and he's able to really put it where he wants it. And he's going to stay side by side through the tri-oval. This could be the move for the lead and maybe the stage win. He's clear of Bryson. Can he slide up and block the crossover? He doesn't even have to. The 63 a little bit too far back to maybe make the crossover yet. But here he comes down the back straightaway, side by side again.
Yeah, so we thought that overtaking would be difficult here at this track, but certainly these guys out in front are showing that it can be done, and can be done regularly and cleanly.
Yeah, very clean racing. As aggressive as it has gotten at times, very clean moves here. The 63 trying to side draft the 54, and that's something we haven't really talked a lot about tonight, but the side draft is going to be more powerful than ever. The bigger that rear spoiler is, the more you can slow your competition down by putting your fender right up against their quarter panel and diverging the air onto that spoiler. It kind of turns it into a parachute for them. And so with the bigger spoiler that we have tonight that we didn't have last week, if you get up alongside somebody, that could be the difference between the pass or staying behind them.
Yeah, the dirty air really is significant here, isn't it? It can be a bonus or it can be a hindrance. Just depends on where you put your car.
Absolutely, and these cars are so different from the cars we used to run, the Gen 6 car, but with everything that's different about them, all the aerodynamic changes, side drafting and slipstreaming, that's all remained a staple, even with the new body style, even with the new aerodynamics. And so these guys, they know what they got to do if they want to side draft the competition, if they want to use the air to their advantage. It's something that they still have experience in, and it definitely transfers over to this next-gen machine.
What do we got? 7 laps to go. Are you prepared to make a bold prediction here at all?
I'm going to say Hutchinson gets this stage win as long as we stay green. He's just got so much center speed, and the advantage to that is if somebody's going to make the overtake, they're going to do it in the middle of the corner. That's just the easiest place to pass. But if you're the fastest car in the center of the corner, who's got anything for you?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, Hixenbauer really needs to play with 6 laps to go. really needs to set up Hutchinson for the overtake at a point in the track where he doesn't really have the opportunity to take him back. So you really want to get it on that last turn.
And right now we see a lot of cloud coverage rolling in over the track, and we were talking a little bit about this before the broadcast started. It is partly cloudy, so we're going to see wild fluctuations in the track temp. Some laps the clouds will be gone, the track's going to be 111 degrees on the surface. Then some laps we're going to get some overcast, and it's going to drop drastically down to maybe 95 degrees on the surface even. And the cars are going to change entirely, so that's a whole other element. Which driver can adapt to the ever-changing grip levels and the ever-changing handling. Some of these drivers are really good at adapting, and others are more rhythm drivers. They get the muscle memory and the feel for something, and that's where they're comfortable. So a lot of things these drivers have on their plate.
Well, I'm not sure if the shadows have an effect on the track temp here either, but you can see the corner they're going through there now. The grandstand casts big shadows across the track. So I'm not sure whether the iRacing software is able to compensate for that as well. But at the other end of the track, there are no shadows. So you could have very different track temps from one end of the track to the other.
And that difference is just compounded by how different 1 and 2 is to 3 and 4. I think with a lot of these driver setups, what they're going to be feeling is in 1 and 2, it's a bit of a tighter corner. The radius isn't quite as sweeping. So the car is going to feel very understeery as they navigate it. But then in 3 and 4, it's a lot more sweeping. The car is going to feel a little bit more free. That's why a lot of these guys are able to run the bottom in 3 and 4, but they have to run the top in 1 and 2. The corners, even though they may look the same on TV, they are very different when you're in the car. And like you said, the shadows at one end and the sun at the other, that just makes it even more difficult.
So 2 laps to go in stage 1. Hutchinson certainly has the lead at the moment, and a quarter of a second gap over Hixenbaugh, which is neither here nor there. Hixenbaugh hasn't made any moves over the last couple of laps, so he's either settling in for second or he's lining him up for that last lap overtake.
And a quick explanation for the viewers at home. The stage caution will be thrown once 10 cars have completed lap 105. Once that 10th car has crossed the line, the admins will throw the caution. Points will be awarded accordingly, and then everybody is free to make their way down pit road, get their car sorted out however they want to. And look at this, a huge gap back to Bryson now as they come to 3 and 4. They're going to cross the stripe for 105, and then once 10 cars have completed that lap, we'll see that stage caution. A lot of lap traffic. The number 40 now going a lap down to Ralph Hutchinson. And pit lane has been closed by the admins, so these guys are going to have to get to the end.
So not what he wanted at lap 104 to go down a lap. It is what it is.
Yeah, he's probably smacking his steering wheel thinking, man, one more lap.
So you've called it. Hutchinson looks as though he's going to take points for stage 1 here in what is proven to be Camaro country in Atlanta as they take out first and second position. And he's crossed the line in lap 5, so we just need to wait for those 10 cars.
And there we have it, stage caution. Looks like the drivers who will be getting points for stage 1 is going to be Ralph Hutchinson, Bryson Hixenbaugh, Matthew Long, Ryan Ducombe, Blake Giglio, Cameron Stone, Dustin Hall, Taylor Stout, Josh Ward, and Sean O'Brien Jr. snagging that last stage point. And David Duke just barely missing out on a stage point by 0.7 of a second, it would seem. So close battles all around. And now pit road's going to open up. These drivers can get their cars serviced. And after they've pitted, we'll go ahead and have a word with our stage winner. But while they pit, I got to ask you, Andrew, what are your predictions for stage 2 after what we saw here?
Well, true class was really shown there from Hutchinson and Hixenbaugh. So you really can't go past them repeating that effort from stage 1. It'll be interesting to see if Stone makes any adjustments to his car, but he ended up 10 seconds to the rear, so he kept losing time. He'll certainly, I would imagine, make adjustments to his strategy in that he wouldn't want to be pitting as early as he did in the first one. But he had good pace. I think it was just the tyres that ruined him during the latter parts of that stage. So I think had he waited for his pit stop a little bit longer, then he would have been up a few more positions.
I agree. Again, when you make these strategy calls, you never quite know how they're going to play out, but you can learn from them. You know, whether they go your way or they go the other way, there's always something to be learned, and that's the thing with these races. NASCAR is not technically an endurance. Whoa! Ralph Hutchinson sliding into his pit stall, and I believe Bryson also overshooting. Both of our leaders had to back up. That's going to be extremely costly. I would not doubt that a few of these drivers are able to get out ahead of them due to that time they lost. But look at that. Bryson actually winning the race off pit road. Impressive.
Yeah, there we go. It's really hard to adjust the mind when you've been going flat out in a circle for 105 laps to then come down to pit lane speed, sorry, and really adjust the mind to the fact that you're going much slower. It feels like you're walking, like you get out and walk faster.
Ain't that the truth? It is so hard to break out of that muscle memory. We're going to bring in Ralph Hutchinson, see what our stage winner has to say. Ralph Hutchinson, you got a copy?
Hello.
Ralph, that was one heck of a stage. You and Bryson were battling it out the entire time. Fireworks were flying. Tell me a little bit about your car. How's it feeling?
The Death Wish medium roast Camaro is flying, and so is Bryson's, as you can see. That was a lot of fun fighting with him there. He's one of those guys you can really trust to race you clean, and that just makes it all the much more fun. So, got to get a little better in turn 2. I have no drive out of turn 2, and then 3 and 4 were hooked up, but that's the ragged edge, trying to balance both ends.
All right. Well, what's the plan going forward? Are you going to try to take it easy, just get there to the end, or what's the game plan?
I'm a firm believer in the safest place to be is up front, so that's my strategy.
All right. I'd have to agree there. As long as you're away from the pack, you're in that clean air, you're not... you can't go wrong with that. Well, anyways, Ralph, thanks for your time. You're going to be going green pretty quickly here, so we'll get you back to your team. But good luck with the next stage, and congrats on the stage win.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Ralph Hutchinson out of the booth. Well, you heard it, Andrew. Safest place to be is up front.
Yeah, and that pit stop has cost Ralph a fair bit. He's back in 6th place now.
Yeah, sliding past your stall. I'm not sure he was aware that he slid past his stall as much as he did, because he sat there for a minute. He skidded past the number plate, and for a minute I thought maybe he was in his stall. And it was only after Bryson had reversed and gotten back in his stall that Ralph said, "Oh, hold on," kicked it in reverse and got it back there. It could also be that he knew he overshot it, and he was kind of fumbling with the gear shift trying to get back to reverse, because again, this car has 5 gears, and for the last 6 decades, NASCAR has worked with 4-gear transmissions. So that's got to throw these guys off a little bit, you think?
Yeah, actually, that was an interesting point you made last week in the broadcast. I wonder how the die-hard NASCAR fans reacted to going from a 4-speed to a 5-speed box.
Yeah, it's been a split reaction. I think you have some of the purists that say, I don't know about the 5-gear. I think we should have just stuck with what we had. Me personally, even as a lifelong fan, I was pretty neutral about it. I thought, I may not be the biggest fan of the 5-gear, but I know a lot of manufacturers out there, that's what they make. Nobody's out here making a 4-speed. Nobody's out here creating the sort of engine that NASCAR really used, nor the transmission. So if we can bring in some new OEMs with a 5-speed transmission, I'm all for it. I think it's better for the sport.
There was a lot of debate amongst the supercars here in Australia at the moment. We run 6-speed boxes in the supercars, but there's a lot of debate at the moment as to whether they go from a sequential gear shift to paddle shift. And there was a lot of the diehards saying, no, we stick with a gear shift. And then others going, well, hang on, if you want the best race cars in the world, they have to be paddle shift.
Isn't that always the debate? What the technological side of things really needs to progress versus what the drivers and what the fans want to see. It is an interesting debate, because sometimes the most advanced car may not put on the best racing, but you never really know until you try it. So it's always the eternal debate.
And I just want to point out something here too, guys, in that third on the track at the moment is Stone. So he's made up some ground in the pit stops. And Long has moved up into second place. Fourth, sorry. So Hutchinson has a bit of work ahead of him in the opening laps. He really needs the drivers in front of him to have cool heads so that he can move through them without any cautions.
Yeah, I'm definitely curious to see if we stay green. Cautions breed cautions, even if it is a caution for a stage. So we'll see what these drivers do. I think level heads will prevail. And even though the 54 has some work ahead of him, it's nice to know that you got a good car under you and the confidence he had in that machine. I mean, it sounded like he was perfectly happy with it. So we'll see as the race gets underway. Pace car is off and Bryson Nixonbaugh is away. A good 3-car length gap as they go too wide for second behind him. Looks like Cameron Stone challenging the 97 and the 99, but ultimately the 97 rocketing down to that white line. He's going to claim second place for himself, and he's going to leave the battling to Cameron Stone and Ryan Ducombe as the 54 is kind of trapped behind him, waiting for an opportunity to try to get back up front where he said he was comfortable.
Yeah, that was a great start by Hutchinson. Look, he's got a gap already, a safety gap you would call it, over Long at the moment. So he's not having to battle. He's just got clear track now and can put the rubber down and put the head down and start putting together some really nice laps without interference from other drivers. So great start by Hutchinson in that second stage.
And Hutchinson already up 2 positions. He's up to 4th, and he's eyeing up that 57, thinking about how am I going to get around this guy? What lines is he running? Where do I need to go to get around him? We know he's got a fast car. Again, it's just watching and waiting. We got to see where the driver's going, where you get that clean air. A little bit of a 2-car breakaway starting to form as the 97 slowly gains on this 63. The 97's had an interesting night. Matthew Long has been up front. He's led some laps. He found himself a little bit further back towards the tail end of the top 10. And overall, I think he's got a strong car. It's just a matter of track position. And if he can get out front and stay out front, we could see him set sail.
Well, Hutchinson's certainly not going to stick around in 5th place. We heard him during the break there say that carnage at the front. Oh.
I am flabbergasted that was not a yellow flag.
Wow. Back onto the track.
So that was 3 cars involved, I believe. We had Ryan Ducombe, we had, I believe, Sean O'Brien Jr., and possibly Dalton Mobley all involved. Dustin Hall for sure got sideways. We're going to take a look at the 3-Wide TV replay, top of your screen. Follow along that white number 1 as Ducombe just gets into the outside wall right in front of him. And then as he corrects the car, unfortunately, he course corrects into the number 1 and then into the number 16. So the number 1 spins through the infield, through the grass, getting thrown for a loop there, nearly flips over on that transition.
So that's sideways scrubbing of the tyres is not going to be helpful for him at all.
No, I'm thinking those round tires are looking a little bit more like octagons at this point.
But our leaders at the moment have now got a bit of a gap.
Yeah, one man's misfortune is another man's stroke of luck, because that incident really played a big part separating this field and getting everybody kind of single filed out. So that allowed these two to break away. And that 97's looking up high, trying to figure something out. He's got a rocket ship. I'd have to assume he's using the same setup as his teammate, Ralph Hutchinson. And man, all those LDR cars seem to have found something.
Yeah, Long making a move now down low to take the lead, and does it convincingly and easily too over Hixenbaugh. So a 2-car breakaway here, but really it's a 4-car. I would imagine that Stone and Hutchinson are going to close up on these guys over the next 10 or so laps, and we'll see a 4-car group leading our train.
That definitely could be. Right now, I'm kind of scrolling through the field right now, kind of keeping an eye on what everybody's doing, and I'm watching Brandon Pierce, and I think his crew chief was right. That aero damage that he got has definitely been holding him up. He's got some decent corner speed as he's currently running P24 on the grid. But as soon as he gets to the straightaway, he immediately loses any ground he makes up in the corners. And at that point, as a driver, there's just not much you can do to compensate for that. You can attempt to carry more speed through the corner and hope that it translates into the straightaway. But at the end of the day, he is just dragging a parachute behind him. And that incident early on is just the consequences are being paid even now.
And it's heartbreaking for a driver too, to do the hard work through the corners and then just see the field drive away from you down the straight, knowing that there's absolutely nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, definitely frustrating. But a lot of these drivers in the field, of course, very tenacious. They're not going to give up. They're going to come out here. They're going to try to salvage every point they can, even if the car isn't quite where it should be. I mean, we've seen drivers wreck on lap one, come back out and run every single lap of the race 20, 30 miles an hour off the pace, just because they know if something happens to another driver and they DNF and I finish the race, well, maybe I'm not the fastest car, but I finished ahead of them and I got those bonus points. But we did have a change for the lead, and it looks like Matthew Long was able to make short work of that 63 machine, and now he's starting to pull away a little bit as Cameron Stone has claimed third place, and he's not too far. He's not too far back. It looks like about a 0.8 second gap, and the lap times between them. Cameron Stone last time by was a 31.3. Bryson Hixenbach was 31.3. Matthew Long was a 31.3. Completely evenly paced up front.
Yeah, we'll see pit window really open at about the 165 lap mark here in this second stage. So it'll be interesting to see what Stone's strategy is at that point. Will he once again take the early pit stop and hope for the undercut? Or will he drive a slightly longer stint this time so that he's got tyres towards the end of the stage?
Yeah, it really could go either way. Maybe he liked that strategy. Maybe he's like, all right, we're going to try something a little bit different. I think now that these drivers have kind of calmed down and cautions have become much less frequent, that's got to be in their mind. They got to be thinking about that a little bit when it comes to planning out their strategy. And they probably feel a little bit more comfortable maybe planning around a green flag stint.
Yeah, absolutely. We haven't seen any cautions for a while, so I would imagine the fastest strategy to do 105 laps at this point is to pit halfway. But we don't know what's going to happen over the next 40 laps either. If we see 2 or 3 cautions, then that's going to throw the mindset of the drivers. And they could go, well, hang on, I'll pit a little bit earlier because we're going to get cautions, so I'm not going to be working the tyres as hard. Or if it runs green the whole way, then certainly that 52, 53 lap mark on the tyres is where it's the ideal point to be pitting.
I agree. It really is going to depend on what happens here. And if it stays green, that's what I'd do. I'd split it in half if I was a driver. But then again, I'm in the booth there on the track, so maybe I'll leave those calls up to them. But yeah, I think you're going to see a lot of the drivers split it in half, like you said there. So it'll be fun. I always love the strategy, watching how everybody kind of chooses to go about what they're going to do with their race. But I'm following along right now with Ralph Hutchinson. And he is currently lapping about a 10th faster per lap than this lead pack. And it's pretty consistent. Every single lap, it's about 1/10 that he's gaining. And within the next couple laps, he's going to be firmly within slipstream range of Cameron Stone, who himself has also been closing in on the leaders. So while we got 2 cars under a blanket up front right now, it's soon to be 4.
Yeah, Stone has really made it a 3-car pack leading at the moment, with Hutchinson very close behind. So these guys have brought in the leading pair, and they'll travel around together. Already coming across some lap traffic here, which is only going to add further interest for these guys and bunch them up, I would imagine.
And call it the commentator's curse, but as we were talking about Ralph, he got really loose in 1 and 2, actually conceded a couple of positions there.
Yeah, so Long takes the lead over Hixenbach. Yeah, Stout has now moved up into 4th place.
Yeah, Ralph got real sideways in 1 and 2 there. He had to get off the throttle, get that car straightened back out, and in doing so, he kind of conceded a position. So he's got one of the fastest cars on the track, if not the fastest, but it doesn't really matter if you keep getting loose, having to give up time like that. So he's going to have to kind of play it by ear here, figure out where the limit is of the car, where's the slip angle, how hard can I push. And now that he got loose like that, now that that's happened, I think he's got a better idea where that limit is.
Yeah, let's hope he didn't hurt his tyres too much.
Yeah, that's definitely something to think about when you slide like that. You know, it heats up the tires. You can even flat spot them, and then from there on out, it's just not going to handle quite as well as you'd hope. But uh, I think, unfortunately, it may have done a number on his tires there, Andrew, because as I've been following along with him, his lap times have fallen off by about 2/10 from what they were immediately following that slide.
Well, let's hope for his sake it was only a temporary overheating, and they can cool down and he can bring back some lap pace. I'd really like to see Hutchinson get back up and battle with these guys, because his drive through that first stage was fantastic, and he certainly deserves another crack at it.
Absolutely. If anybody deserves to have a chance at it, it's the guy who was just dominant in stage one. And he is closing back in on the 89. His lap times are starting to stabilize a little bit. Still not quite as quick as what he was, but he is gaining a little bit of time back. So who knows? He may be able to get back up there. But Cameron Stone up in third. That's another driver I'm following along with. He's not quite at the bumper of the 63, but he is in this pack, and he's making his presence known. And I got to wonder if he's just riding right now, waiting for that car to come to him and kind of come to life on this long run, or if this is all he has. But it seems like 1 and 2 is his strong suit. As he comes through the corner, you can see he closes in a good car length or two. But then as they get to the straightaway, he's just not carrying quite as much momentum out of the corner. And in 3 and 4, that's where our 2 leaders start to kind of pull him just a little bit. So everybody's setup seems to be faster in a different portion of the track.
Yeah, well, Stone's made up 2/10 through 1 and 2, but then loses it through 3 and 4, although he hasn't lost as much this time. So made significant ground through corners 1 and 2 on that last lap. If he can continue to do that and not lose as much, then he will be all over the back of Hicksonbold really quickly.
Especially with these guys battling. I'm noticing Bryson's getting a little bit more aggressive. He's entering the corner really close to the leader. You know, whereas before he was kind of laid off a little bit, just kind of hanging back. Now he's getting a little bit closer, kind of applying the pressure. And that's kind of what you want to do as the following car, because the leader kind of has an advantage of he gets to set the pace. You know, if he wants to take it easy, he can take it easy. If he wants to drive hard and make you drive hard just to keep up, then he can do that as well. But if you've got a car that can maybe even surpass the leader, you can try to push him. You know, put your car right in that mirror, take it all up, and force him to overdrive that car and maybe heat up his tires. And if you can use that aggression, maybe intimidate him a little bit, that is going to pay dividends later on in the run. But if Bryson's going to really apply the pressure, he's got to be careful, because that means he's driving hard too. And from what we've seen, these cars do not like to be overdriven. You make one mistake, you know, drive it in a little bit too deep, give it a little bit too much input on the steering, and you might find yourself going for a ride. So it's a game of balance.
Yeah, you're exactly right there. When you're the car that's chasing, you can. It's easy to put a lot of pressure on the one in front, and when you're doing that, you still don't have to use as much tyre and as much fuel as the leading car, but you're able to fill their mirrors, swerve all over the back of them, making sure that they know you're there, and forcing them to use their tyres and use their car up without you having to overdrive your car at all.
Cameron Stone continuing to lurk behind these guys. And as we're on lap 136, how about we do a through the field? So how this is going to work, Andrew, is we are going to alternate. We're going to take a look at the top 10, starting with first all the way back to 10th. We'll alternate, each taking a driver, talk a little bit about their race and how it's gone so far. And we're going to start out with the leader, Dustin Long, in the 97. As I already mentioned, this driver has had an up and down night. He's led a lot of laps. He's found himself a little bit further back through the grid, but through it all, he's kept his car clean. He hasn't been involved in any scuffles at all. And so far, it seems like that clean air is doing him well.
Yeah, well, Hicksonbold, we've talked a lot about him tonight. He was second in stage 2, ran a great battle throughout the race with Hutchinson, and now he's battling with Long for a stage 2 victory. So showing great consistency and great pace all night. If he can bring home either first or second in this stage as well, then he's looking really good for an overall round win.
Cameron Stone running third, a very strong long run car that tends to suffer a little bit on the short runs, although he may have made some adjustments to the car under pit road because he has a little bit more short run pace, it would seem, as in this stint he's kept pace with the leaders and proven himself to be a contender. And so far, he's watching this battle between the leaders as it looks like Bryson is going to take the lead from Dustin Long. I'll hand it off to you for fourth.
I haven't seen much of what Stout has done tonight, so I don't have a lot of information on how he's gone, but I didn't see a lot of action from him in the first stage, and I'm not sure where he came in. But, certainly sitting in fourth at the moment and only 3 seconds behind the leaders of the race at the moment. He's looking good for a solid result here in stage 2.
And right behind him is his teammate Ralph Hutchinson in that number 54 machine. Ralph is the stage 1 winner, one of the fastest cars on the track when his tires are fresh at least. And when we talked to him under the yellow flag, he talked about just wanting to be up front, make sure he's in a comfortable position, away from the traffic, away from the chaos. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to find his way up front right away. We got a lot of racing left, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see him march towards the front later on.
And so Durham in that 217 machine is next. So once again, a driver I didn't see a lot of in the first stage, but currently 5 seconds behind the leaders. I'm not sure where he started in stage 1, but once again, looking good for a result here.
And currently riding in 7th, it's the 07, Lucas Hoytsma. Lucas was... Well, he was biting his fingernails prior to this race because he wasn't sure he was actually going to be in the event. He went to post his qualifying lap, and he actually spun out on lap 2, which is generally the faster lap of the two. As a result, he did not get the qualifying time that he wanted, that he knew he was capable of, and he was concerned that other drivers may out-qualify him and he might be packing up and going home. Fortunately for him, he was able to just squeak into the grid, started towards the back, and now he's raced his way all the way up to P7, and he's trying to run down the number 6 position.
So O'Brien Jr., number 65. Best lap so far, almost a 31 flat, but currently doing 32 twos. So looking consistent at the moment. In 8th place, 6 seconds behind the leaders. Let's hope he can continue doing consistent laps here, and they'll be looking to pit over the next 20 or so laps, so maybe make up some ground.
And currently sitting in 9th is going to be Josh Ward. Now, Josh has had a bit of a scary night tonight. I haven't seen a whole lot out of him tonight. We haven't really focused on him a whole lot. But what I have seen is he's been dangerously close to a few of the incidents we've had tonight, and he's just kind of squeaked his way through. And that really does a lot to kind of fray a driver's nerves and get him a little bit nervous when you're that close to disaster that many times. But despite the pressure and despite being just kind of on the teetering edge of chaos, he's kind of kept a level head, and he's maintained firmly inside the top 10.
Samuelson, the 81 machine, best lap at the moment, or he's just done his best lap actually on, lap 114, 31 flat, currently doing 32 fives, 32 sixes. So certainly not with the pace of the leaders at the moment, but keeping the car clean, keeping it straight, and hoping for a good result.
And just an extra note on Ryan Samuelson, this is a really impressive run for him because he climbed up in the booth last week. As some of the viewers may remember, towards the end of the event, he kind of volunteered to be a guest commentator. And we were talking a little bit about the next-gen car, and just from the way he was talking and his tone of voice, he was not feeling this car. Just the way that it handled, the amount of downforce and the level of grip just wasn't really in his wheelhouse. And the way he was talking, he was really concerned about even qualifying for some of these races. But despite those concerns and being a little bit hard on himself, here he is in the top 10. So really impressive out of that 81. Seems like, despite the nerves, he's figuring the car out slowly but surely. That is going to do it for our Through the Field, 1 through 10. A lot of action everywhere on the track. Ooh, looks like the 4B may have scraped the wall that corner, not entirely sure, but Looks like a lot of lap traffic for our leaders to deal with. I just switched back to the perspective of Cameron Stone, and he's still tailing along with Bryson Hickson-Law and Matthew Long, but they have been in a hornet's nest trying to move high, move low, get around these lap cars in any way they know how. And whoa, Bryson trapped behind a lap car, gets a little bit loose. He's not out of the woods yet. Hard impact. The leader has wrecked. And that is going to be terminal damage. There is no front end left on that 63. What a turn of events.
Wow, if there's, I was going to say if there was one bit of silver lining there, it happened at pit entry, but he is a long way from pit entry now, and he's got a long drive around. So it has just snapped sideways on him there, and he's gone straight into the wall, turned into what was looked like a 1080 as he spun along the track. Luckily, there were no other cars involved in that incident.
And I can tell you exactly what happened there. Bryson got trapped behind the number 44, and it wasn't the 44's fault. He's running his line. He's doing what he needs to do. But Bryson had to let off the throttle pretty aggressively to match the pace of that 44 to avoid rear-ending him. And in any form of oval racing, weight shift is very important. And with his next-gen car, it's amplified. When he let off the throttle as aggressively as he did, all of that weight shifted from the back of the car to the front. And at that point, the rear end of the car is essentially floating, and he lost all grip, and it started to get loose. And the other issue with this car is with all the ground force that it generates, as opposed to downforce. Once it snaps sideways and that diffuser loses its ground effect, it is nigh on impossible to correct this car. It is so easy to overcorrect, snap into the outside wall like we saw, and unfortunately, that is going to be just about all she wrote for the number 63.
Yeah, well, when he had that weight transition to the front end of the car, he was also, of course, following that car, so he would have had no aero holding the front end down either. So not only did he have the rear end of the car being a complete passenger, but he had no grip at the front end of the car, so he was always a passenger at that point.
Yeah, not an ideal situation, and at that point, like you said, you're more of a passenger than anything. It's very difficult to do anything, but we do have Bryson in the infield care center. This ought to be a interesting interview. We'll bring him up. Bryson Hickson-Law, you got a copy? You got a copy, Bryson?
Oh, yeah.
Just a shocking turn of events there. Really unfortunate incident. Tell me about it.
Yeah, just the car is so unhappy about not driving whatever lane you set it up for. This car is real fast up top, but if you don't run the top, it just gets loose, and there's really no saving it at that point. I'm just glad I didn't take anybody else out with me. It was a really bad mistake on my part, and fortunately, I think we had the winning car here today.
Yeah, the car seemed like a rocket ship when you were battling out with Ralph Hutchinson in the 97. Definitely seemed like the car to beat. When you got sideways, we could see you trying to correct it, just sawing on that wheel, and then of course it just kind of snapped loose. That's a reoccurring thing with this car. We've seen so many drivers get loose, and when it happens, they just overcorrect. It snaps into the outside wall. Is there anything you can do as a driver to prevent that, or is this car just that volatile that you're just kind of along for the ride?
What you're really supposed to do with this car is not steer. Like, if you counter steer to the right, it's gonna turn to the right and hook into the wall. If you just let it slide, you can usually bring it down to the apron and save it. Right there, I was worried about Matthew Long to my inside. If I slid down to the bottom, I'd hit him or I'd hit Cam or somebody down there. So I was trying my best to save it and not take out anybody with me. It just wasn't meant to be.
That's unfortunate. Next week, we're going to a road course, Coda. How do you feel about doing some road course racing? And yeah, what are you looking forward to?
I'm not too looking forward to it too much in this car. The brakes are supposed to be better, and it's supposed to be a better road course car, but this thing the brakes just lock up instantly as soon as you touch them. It's really not been fun. Maybe a more dedicated setup will help with that, but and my testing so far hasn't been too good.
All right. Well, we're sorry your race ended that way, or is it over? I mean, is the damage terminal?
It's not quite terminal, but it's not worth riding around for another 3 hours.
Understandable. Well, Bryson, thank you for your time, and again, sorry that your night came to an early end.
Yep. Thank you guys for broadcasting the race, and have a good one.
You too. Bryson Nixonbaugh out of the booth as the lights are off on the pace car.
Well,
And
and you could really feel the deflation in his voice there because he knew he had a good car, he knew he had good pace, and he was looking forward to a good result. And then to have that happen to him on at essentially what is the halfway point of the race, he was really deflated there, wasn't he?
Yeah, a lot of disappointment in his voice, and you know, sometimes if you're looking forward to next week, if there's a track coming up on the schedule that you're excited about, it kind of softens the blow of something like this. But from the sounds of it, he wasn't looking forward to Dakota either. So that's just a bit of a double whammy. You know, he had a good chance here, and that chance was unfortunately taken away from him. And now he's going into a track that he's not too confident in. So just a unfortunate situation as the race has continued, and Cameron Stone has slipped right into second. I got to wonder what Cameron Stone is thinking about right now, because Bryson Nixonbaugh, although he's not a teammate of Cameron Stone's, they are friends off the track. And with that kind of knowledge, you know that Bryson's going to race you clean. You know that he's going to maybe throw you a bone every now and again in terms of slipstream. But now he's all on his own. You know, he doesn't have any friends on the track around him. He is surrounded by LDR machines with Matthew Long in front of him, Taylor Stout behind him, Ralph Hutchinson closing the gap to also join this battle. And SBR and LDR, they don't get along very well. So you got to think he's feeling pretty lonely right about now.
Maybe ganged up on and bullied might be another way of putting it as well. But that that caution certainly came at the right time for the drivers. So they've been able to pretty much split their race, or split this stage into two, by doing their pit stop there. So almost takes strategy out the window now and comes down to pace of the drivers.
Yeah, it's really going to come down to the driver's ability, what their car is capable of, and it looks like Stout was able to get around Cameron Stone, and that is the sort of lack of short run speed that we've seen out of that 57 all night long. It's going to be a while before it comes in, but I'm following along with this number 54, who is currently just behind this 3-car breakaway and actually closing in on him. And this car does not look as stable as it looked when he was at the front of the field. When we watched him battling with Bryson Nixonbaugh, and they were in clean air, that car looked like a dream. It wasn't bouncing around. It wasn't throwing sideways in the corners. Now, as I watch him, he's sideways every corner. That car is really, really violent looking. And I got to wonder if this setup was built specifically for being up front, you know, for that clean air. And now that he's back in the pack, it seems like everything's stacking against him, and that car is not working with him.
We surmised early on that he had his car set up for short runs. So it may be the case that he is just pushing it so hard to get back to the lead that he's becoming a bit unsettled as he does it. So with the car set up to be quick over short stints, he would be expecting that he's going to work his way through the field. And when that doesn't happen, he might find himself pushing it harder and harder, which could be the cause of it as well.
And training yourself not to overdrive, I think, is something that all of these drivers are going to have to work on throughout this season. Because when you look at the Gen 6 car that we raced last year, at the majority of tracks, it was almost impossible to overdrive. We had 550 horsepower. We had massive amounts of downforce with the big spoiler and the big splitter. The car was very easy to drive. Some of the drivers were even quoted as saying, it drives itself. So even when you were pushing the car, it was still very comfortable. Now we've got a car that has more horsepower, more torque, less downforce. It's a little bit more unstable, as we saw from Bryson Nixonbaugh. So overdriving is a lot easier to do. You know, just a little bit too much throttle input, just a little bit too much steering. And that's something that these drivers have not had to deal with for pretty much the entirety of the Gen 6 era. So it's going to be tough.
Yeah, overdriving is something that even the Formula One drivers at the pinnacle of racing in the world That's something that they're guilty of and still have to work on. So even the best drivers in the world are still having to battle that demon. And it really comes down to controlling that red mist. So when you see the cars that are ahead of you perhaps pulling away, then it's you just got to put yourself in the mindset of, okay, maybe they're just faster at this point in the race than I am, and I just have to accept that. I have to run my race, and it'll come to me. So later on in the race, they'll be slower, and I'll be faster, but it's really hard to control that red mist once it starts.
Absolutely. I mean, everybody has a game plan until they climb in the car, and everybody around them is, doing their own thing and seeing different pace. I mean, you could turn 100 practice laps and say, you know what, I'm content with this pace. Maybe I'm running 30.1s, and I think that's good enough. But then you get in the race and you see somebody running a 30 flat, and they got an extra tenth on you. All of a sudden, you're not content with that 30.1. Now you're pushing the car and you're doing everything you can to make up that time. And you're absolutely right. It's all about self-control, controlling that aggression that kind of builds up almost subconsciously. Sometimes you don't even realize how amped up you're getting in the car. You're so tunnel visioned in on everything.
Well, I've run a Fitbit on myself in real life racing, and my heartbeat peaks at about 160 beats a minute when I'm racing real cars. And when I'm racing sim cars, it peaks at about 130. So there's not a significant difference there to the way your brain perceives what you're doing when you're racing sim. And it's one of the tricks that I've learned really is to control that heart rate, control the breathing, and keep yourself under control so that you're not gripping the steering wheel with all your might and just wearing yourself out, because these races are long, and to maintain focus and attention for this period of time without wearing yourself out is quite difficult, and it really is a skill to master.
Absolutely. I mean, these drivers, they're dealing with so much in the car. You already mentioned the length of the race and how long these events can be, but now at a track like this, the entirety of the event is very on edge and very sketchy. These cars are so hard to drive that they have to be on the ball 24/7. There's never really a moment where they can take it easy on themselves and think to themselves, okay, I'm gonna just relax a little bit here. We're gonna make our laps. We're gonna click them off one by one, because this car is just on edge. They get into the corner, it gets a little bit sideways, and they think, well, wait, why did it do that? I take that corner the same way every single time, and this time it slid sideways. So if you can master that, like you were talking about, to practice the breathing, keep that heart rate down, keep yourself calm. That is a huge advantage, because it's incredibly difficult to do in this car.
Oh, and people look at circuit racing and oval racing, and they look at the cars running around the ovals and they go, how hard is it? You're just turning left all the time. But the fact is you don't get a break in these, so your focus has to be 100% on all the time. Whereas in circuit racing, you quite often have a long straight where you can go, okay, all I've got to do is point the thing forwards and not think at the moment. So I can check my tyres, I can check my fuel, I can check everything, and you can take a mental break for a couple of seconds. Whereas certainly at Atlanta, you don't get that opportunity, because you are on 100% of the time, 325 laps. And by the time you get to the end of it, you're absolutely exhausted.
And in addition to not having the longer straightaways and the moments to breathe, you're just in traffic a lot more with oval circuits. I mean, if you're racing open wheel at a track like Spa, for example, depending on your pace, you may never see a lap car the whole race. You might be kind of in your own little world for the majority of it. Whereas in a race like this, you might have 20, 30 laps where you're kind of just racing the cars around you, but give it some time, you're guaranteed to get up into that lap traffic. And once you get to it, you never get out of it. It's a steady stream of cars, one after another, and it's just constantly having to adapt your line and race around them. And again, oval racing, obviously the racing craft would be to let the faster cars go and try to run your own line, make sure they know what line you're running so they can navigate you cleanly. But there is no official rule about it. We don't have the blue and yellow flags that a lot of other forms of motorsports have. So it's kind of in the driver's hands, and you got to think that adds a lot of stress.
And as we've been talking, Hutchinson has moved his way up into third, and he is putting a lot of pressure on Stout at the moment. So looking to force the issue through. Stone currently sitting in fourth. He's only 1 second behind the leader. So we have got a 4-car train here leading this peloton at the moment. And you've got to think that perhaps Hutchinson and Stone are going to be the ones to watch as we get towards the end of this stage.
That definitely could be. They could be taking care of their equipment back here, maybe not pushing it as hard as they necessarily could be as they watch these leaders kind of ride around, clicking off their laps. They're just saying, all right, we're going to take it easy, and when it comes down to it, we're going to turn on the light switch, so to say. But Cameron Stone's pace is impressing me. I mean, he is turning pretty much identical laps with these LDR machines, and after Ralph Hutchinson got around him, I was thinking maybe Cameron's going to fall back a ways. He's going to continue to kind of bleed positions here. But he has stayed right with that 54. And I think as the 54 gains and as the 54 makes moves, he's going to continue to pull that 57. And this stage is anybody's game at this point. I mean, so evenly matched, which is one of the things that always impresses me about this league and some other leagues within the service here. It is open setup. You can do whatever you want to your car, and a lot of these guys have wildly different setups. But despite that, the competition level is so close, and they find themselves within tenths of each other. So many laps even into a run. It's always fun to watch.
Well, regardless of setups and regardless of any form of racing, always the biggest difference between the cars is the bum that's in the seats.
That is true.
If Long, Stout, and Hutchinson are all from the same team and running the same setup, then you would expect that it really just does come down to the driver. But we surmised earlier that perhaps Stone is running a setup for longer runs. So this is, and we were suspecting that Hutchinson was running a setup for shorter runs. So if these three front guys are all running the same setup, then once we get closer to lap 210, then the race is going to come to Stone. He doesn't have to push it at the moment.
Just an update on Bryson Nixon. He said in his interview that he didn't think it was worth it to ride around for 3 more hours, and he did officially take the car behind the wall. So he is in the hauler and presumably watching the race from the grandstands at this point, unfortunately, but he has disconnected. So he is the first driver in a while to disconnect. I'm surprised a lot of these drivers that have been involved in incidents have really been able to beat the damage out and get their car back on track. Maybe not at full pace, maybe they're down on horsepower a little bit, but they are able to get back out there. And that's one of the beautiful things about this car. It's just how sturdy it seems to be. Presuming you get the damage in the right place, it can be a little bit forgiving. And that's keeping a lot of these guys hopeful in terms of the points picture.
Yeah, it's unfortunate he didn't get back out. I mean, the amount of time that these guys would spend practicing and setting up their car to then only get halfway through the race and have to pull out is disappointing, to say the least.
And to compound that, I mean, for Bryson, I know he's a big fan of Atlanta and really any track with an older surface that's hard to drive. He's a big fan of it. And this may be the last race for this league on Old Atlanta. In fact, the only reason we're racing on Old Atlanta now is because the iRacing service has not added the 2022 repave, which is going to completely change the way the track races. It'll become almost a mini Daytona where there's very little off-throttle time. The draft will become much more important. Grip levels will be much higher, and the sort of unstable, slidey racing that we're seeing here on this old surface, that'll be a thing of the past. So to see your last attempt at this track in its current form end that way, it's never what you want to see. But either way, this track is putting on one heck of a show for its last hoorah, because these guys have been battling all night long. I mean, really, Andrew, has there been a second of a lull in the action?
It's never been more than a second gap between the front two cars. So from lap 1 onwards, there's always been a battle at the front. There's always been a battle in that second group, and quite often through the third and fourth, where we see an absolute peloton of cars. So it certainly hasn't created the amount of cautions that we were suspecting might be. But then we said if there's not going to be a heap of cautions, what we could see is just a train of cars running around in single file. And we were far off there too, because we've seen overtakes, we've seen guys battling, we've seen guys taking different lines. We've seen it all here at the moment, and we're only just at the halfway point, so we've still got another 145 laps to go.
About a lap ago, Ralph Hutchinson came across the driver radio, said, "Go ahead and take it, Cam." And Cam did. He moved down low, went around the 54, and took P3. And so far, it seems as though he's holding on to it pretty comfortably. I don't think Ralph is too aggressive in terms of trying to get that position back. Whether Ralph is just trying to conserve his equipment, or maybe he's kind of feeling like the tires are falling off, the car's starting to fade. I don't want to hold him up. I don't want to be slowing myself down even more by battling with him. Whatever the reason, he did decide to concede the position. Now, it's going to be a matter of can Cam run down these leaders with this long run setup that we kind of presume that he has. The gap is large, but not insurmountable. It's about 1.2 seconds, but to his advantage, and this is what's going to help him out. Matthew Long has caught Taylor Stout, and these two are going to battle. Even though they're teammates, I don't think they're going to be content to ride single file. If Matthew Long can get up there and try to take the lead, he's going to do it. And if they start battling, well, we got two cars in the catbird seat that we know have a lot of speed. I mean, that 54 and the 57, they've been great all night long, and they may have an opportunity soon.
Well, if you're a team owner and you've got Hutchinson and Stone in your team, then it just makes sense to have them run alternate setups, because you don't know what the race is going to bring. So if Stone is running a car for a long setup, then it's at this point where he's got pace over Hutchinson. So certainly makes sense for Hutchinson to let him go and let him lead the way at the moment, because if he's got the pace to run down these leaders and drag Hutchinson along with him, then that's just the smart move strategically. If they get another caution now, then you might expect these guys to swap positions if they are running alternate setups and alternate strategies.
And the aggression level from the 97 is starting to rise. He's really diving down low, trying to make sure he's running a separate line from the leader, and he's made a few swings at it. He's not quite close enough to make a slide job or really throw any crazy Hail Marys at it, but he's closing in. He's made a few minor attempts, kind of testing the waters, I would say. I think he'd give it a few more laps, and we're going to see a battle for the lead. But Cameron Stone, Ralph Hutchinson, they're probably hoping that battle happens sooner rather than later, because they're continuing to fall back. It was 1.2 last time around. Then it was 1.4. This time, as they cross the line, there goes the leaders. Here comes Cameron Stone, and the gap is going to be 1.4 again, so it actually equalized that time. But yeah, it's just lost a little bit of ground, and now they got to try to make it up.
Yes, yeah, certainly Stout and Long don't need to be battling just yet. They've got another 26 laps to go towards the end of this stage, so they can go around and just keep that gap between them and Stone where it is now, or hopefully extend it and give themselves a bit of a comfort and buffer zone so that they can battle without having to cost themselves first or second in this stage.
Absolutely. I want to point out something that must have happened earlier in the race when we had an issue with the number 12. When he got involved in that incident, I would say about 45 minutes ago or so, he actually put in the Discord chat that his throttle hung, which I would assume he means that his actual pedals somehow stuck. And that is what caused his issue earlier in the race. I didn't catch that when it happened. I wasn't looking at the text chat, but that is an explanation, and it makes sense because it seemed like once he got loose, he never really lifted off the throttle. He continued to spin his tires, and that's not something you want to happen in a car with this much torque. I mean, you do not want to be spinning those tires, and it's kind of unfortunate for the 12th because now that he's kind of out of the picture, it's kind of easy to forget. But early on in this event, he was up there in the top 5, and he seemed to have a lot of speed, but not the first equipment failure we've had at Atlanta. I believe last year when we came to this track, somebody's monitor closed or turned off, and they were just left with a black screen. So Atlanta and equipment failures seem to be the iconic duo.
Well, racing and equipment failures in general. Sometimes you can put so much preparation into a race, and it's a 20-cent part that brings you undone.
That is absolutely true, and with sim racing, maybe with this new car, there's not much of a difference. I think the equipment failures would be the same as they used to be, but in real life, this next-gen car is actually having a lot more equipment failures than the Gen 6, so it's kind of funny from a fan's perspective. I mean, I remember back in the days of the Gen 4 when somebody was going to blow an engine every single week, and then we got to the car tomorrow in the Gen 6, and that stopped happening, and now it's happening again with the next-gen car, and a lot of the newer fans are like, wait a minute, why are they blowing engines? Why is the suspension just randomly breaking? And it's like, this stuff all used to happen all the time, but I don't know. a lot of NASCAR fans kind of got complacent with the cars we had before. And with sim racing, of course, you don't have the equipment failures in sim, but rather you have equipment failures in real life, whether it's your force feedback failing like we saw with Adam Benefield early on in the season, or it's your, something going on with the pedals. We've even seen last season somebody's wheel came dismounted from their desk and came hurling off the table. So you never really know what's going to happen.
They might have been gripping their wheel a little bit tight in that round, I would imagine.
Perhaps.
But yeah, it only takes a little bit of dust on a connection somewhere, and all of a sudden you have either your brake trailing constantly. You could have your accelerator stuck on, as we seen earlier. You could have any amounts of things go wrong just from a little bit of dust being caught up in the wrong place on the sim rig with these things. So, although it's a different risk to real life racing, there's still the exact same thing that can go wrong. It's just different things that cause it.
That is the truth. Let me tell you. I'll tell you what, I got an idea. Why don't we pull in our in-race pit reporter, Bryce Hoffman. He's on the box for that number 57 machine that's currently riding P3. Hopefully we won't be interrupting anything. Actually, no, he is not in the chat. They have lost their crew chief, apparently, so we're not able to pull him in. Nope, he's back. He's in their chat now.
Let's try and get some information out of him about whether Stone's running a setup for long or short runs.
I agree. Let's go ahead and pull him in. Hope we're not interrupting anything. Bryce Hoffman, you got a copy?
Yep, I got you.
We're not interrupting anything, are we?
Nope, nothing.
All right. Well, Cameron Stone's running P3. I'd assume you're kind of keeping an eye on him, kind of up on the box, watching all the drivers for SBR. Tell me a little bit about Cam's race so far, and specifically, what kind of setup do you think he has? Is he better on the long run, the short run? What is that car built for?
Cam's set is absolutely built for the long run, and this set has exceeded everything we expected it would do. We did not expect to be running in the top 3 at any point in this race with that set.
It definitely lines up with what we were seeing. I mean, Andrew and I all race along have kind of been assuming he's on a long run setup just from the performance we've seen. Now, he's kind of sandwiched between all the LDR guys. He's kind of the odd man out in this situation. How do you think his car stacks up against LDR? Do you think when it comes down to it, he's going to be able to get up there with Long and Stout and kind of duke it out? Or is he just kind of, is what he's doing right now all he's got?
I believe that car's got a little more in it than what we thought. Cam has decided to just ride, let the stages go by. We'll get up there when we need to be there. You only need to lead one lap.
All right. My final question, I think this is going to kind of help some of the viewers at home to understand as well. What are we looking at in terms of tire wear? I mean, how important are tires, and what are the value you guys are placing on them?
Tires, especially, considering this is old Atlanta and we're racing on what is considered a cheese grater, this track is destroying our tires. It's been a serious problem against all the SBR boys. It's really hurting Mason Lowry. We've been fighting this all race.
Now, when the tires wear, is the car getting more tight or is it getting looser?
The car gets incredibly tight, and then sometimes it'll cause the car to actually snap. So you'll see some guys go into the corner, not be able to turn, and as they go to get back on the throttle, the car will actually start to spin out on them, and they have to save it.
Snap loose is never good. That's what we saw take the 63 out of the race earlier on. But yeah, that's got to be a handful. Well, anyways, Bryce, thanks for your time. We're going to put you back with your team, and good luck.
All right, thank you.
Bryce Hoffman out of the booth, and I guess we nailed it, Andrew. Long run setup.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Takes the guesswork out of it for us now, and the fact that Stone was, well, we really don't know what Stout and Long are running at this point, but he was able to stay with them through those early parts of the lap, this stage, and you would think that as it, we only have 14 laps to go, so Bryce said he was happy to just sit there for the time being. And look to win it on lap 325, not on lap 210, which is where this stage finishes. So he may be happy to just sit in third place at the moment and look to have a good starting position for the final stage.
That was interesting. I was watching Taylor Stout through 1 and 2. He actually dipped 2 tires down onto the apron firmly past that white line. Not sure if that was intentional or just him having to chase the car down the track. But that is not something you want to do with an unstable race car. But like Bryce said, as the tires wear, the car gets tighter and tighter. I wouldn't put it past some of these guys to be just crazy enough to try to use that apron to rotate the car.
Yeah, well, it certainly doesn't give you any extra stability, but if it's going to help you rotate it without losing speed, then, geez, it's high risk, but if you can pull it off.
In that corner, the leader did it, number 97, Matthew Long. So both of these LDR machines trying to get down on that apron, even dip 2 tires onto it. Like you said, high risk, but I mean, stage points are everything. And you got to get every point you can. And I bet you these drivers are pretty thankful the stage is coming to a close, because not only are their tires probably on their last legs, but also they have been in lap traffic for a good 15, 20 laps, just a steady stream of cars. And they're probably ready to get this field stacked up and get a good few laps of clean air underneath them.
Yeah, it's really tiring too when you're doing that. It brings it accelerates that mental fatigue that we were talking about earlier, because you've got these lapped cars coming up and you know that you're significantly faster than them, but then you've got these doubts in your mind going, what are they going to do? Are they going to force the issue here? Are they going to be gentleman races and let me go past? And you're second guessing yourself the whole time. But all night we've just seen the lap traffic be completely gentleman races and let these guys go without forcing the issue. So gives them confidence to be able to push the cars and work their way through them.
What a change of events for Dustin Hall. He has disconnected due to lag, packet loss specifically. The driver who qualified on the pole has been involved in numerous incidents and now unfortunately gets disconnected. That is just heartbreaking.
Yeah, this is a round to forget for Dustin, that's for sure. So was showing great pace until that incident that put his car sideways and turned his tyres into octagons, and has really struggled since then.
Yeah, it's unclear whether or not he'll be able to get back in the session and maybe try to salvage some points. But when he did disconnect, I believe he was running in the 18th position, 2 laps down. Or at least that's where he was when I was able to quickly pull up the timing and scoring before he lost any positions. So I mean, he was down, but he wasn't quite out at that point. Now that's kind of a killing blow at that point with the disconnect. But Cameron Stone, I believe, got around Taylor Stout. Stout may or may not have had some contact with the wall, lost a lot of pace right there, and that's going to put Cam up into P2 with only about 8 laps left in the stage. As they come into turn 1, it's about a 1.2 second gap to the leader, so actually a little bit less than it was last time we checked, but if he wants to get up to him and challenge him, he's got to get moving because this stage is winding down.
Yeah, and actually with that disconnect from Dustin Hall, that takes our 1 and 2 qualifiers out of the race.
That is true. Both of the front row drivers now behind the wall and out of the event. That's I'm not very superstitious, but that almost seems like some sort of curse.
Matthew Long with a healthy lead here at the moment, 1.2, almost 1.3 seconds ahead of Long with only a couple of laps to go. The race is really his to lose, so commentator's curse locked and loaded right there. Let's, with a couple of laps to go, let's hope he can maintain it, keep it straight and in between the lines.
Ralph Hutchinson really trying to get around his teammate for 3rd place, and I'll tell you why that's important. On the restarts, it seems like the bottom line is the place to be, so if he can finish in 3rd, and the pit sequence plays out under yellow exactly as planned, and he comes out 3rd, he's going to be inside of row 2, and that's going to give him a great opportunity to maybe make a lunge at the lead as early as the first lap of the stage. But if he finishes 4th, and then under pit road he comes out 4th, then he's going to be on the outside. And, well, he's already restarted on the outside once, and it did not work out too well for him, and I'm sure he's not wanting to repeat that event. So if he can get around that 89, put himself in 3rd right there on the podium, he's going to do it. But, man, he's driving his heart out. You can see that car getting sideways, but not quite able to get there yet.
It's probably unnecessary for him to do that because he's been following cars around for a long time. He let his teammate go through and he's just sat in the draft of cars for a long time. So the likelihood is that he's used less fuel than the cars that are in front of him. So his stationary time's going to be less than those anyway. So he could be able to just jump them in the pits without having to battle them on the track here.
That's a good point. Less time fueling is definitely going to be crucial, especially because now we've got one lug on these tires, so changing tires is much quicker, and really the determining factor of pit road speed is going to be how much fuel you need to take. So that is honestly something I didn't even think about. That's a great point. But look at this 89. He has come to life. He fell back a ways. He was almost falling to the clutches of the 54, but now he's going to get back around Cameron Stone for second. That's going to put Cam in third. And seems like after his tires cooled back down and he was able to get that car back underneath him, that speed came back.
Yeah, so clearly running a long stint strategy in that car as well. The fact that he's able to take it to Cameron Stone here in the latter parts of this stage and make moves on him, showing that his car has got really good pace over the long stints.
Absolutely. Everybody's still trying to run that white line in 3 and 4, which is kind of surprising. I mean, with the car getting tighter and tighter, as Bryce was talking about earlier in the booth there, you would think these guys would kind of migrate to the top, try to carry some more speed. But 3 and 4, I guess the turning radius is just wide enough that they're still comfortable on the bottom, even with the worn tires, which is a little bit different than what we saw in Gen 6. I think by this point in a run in the old Gen 6 car, these guys would have been wall riding, doing everything they could to stay as close as they could without actually scraping the wall. Pit lane is closed, so the drivers are not going to have to wait till the stage caution if they want to get their car serviced. Taylor Stout makes a little bit more contact with the wall. I think he's just calibrating it, making sure it's in the right place. But it is the white flag of the stage, and it looks like no competition for our leader, Matthew Long.
No, an easy win for Long here in stage 2. It's still a bit of battle for second, third and fourth here at the moment. I don't know that these guys have actually settled for their positions. I think they're still looking to see if there's an opportunity. Certainly Hutchinson is at the moment. He's got back and forth all over the back of Stone, but we're not going to be able to do it at this point. So it'll have to wait till stage 3.
And maybe we caught it on the tail end of the camera there, but look at who's right behind this lead pack. Dustin Hall's back in the game. He was able to rejoin the session after the connection issues, and he's back on track.
Well, that's good to see him back out there, and hopefully the stage 3 he can luck will be on his side this time. I think he's used up his quota of bad luck today, so perhaps stage 3 will be his race and he can push through the pack a bit.
Yeah, we'll have to see. He's 8 laps down, which honestly, to be disconnected from the session entirely and only lose 8 laps under green, that is... And he was 2 laps down when he got disconnected. He only lost 6 laps. That is wildly impressive. That's about 3 minutes. So he only took 3 minutes to reconnect to the session. That is... it's kind of mind-blowing.
He's in it for fun now, isn't he? He's here to just enjoy the race over the third stage, and I imagine it'll be a significantly different mentality and approach for him as it's been through the first 2, because he can afford to be a little bit more relaxed and just enjoy the racing.
Yeah, I agree. In fact, I tell you what, the league admins have kind of given us free reign who we interview in these stage cautions. They said maybe not always the stage winner necessarily, but drivers who have maybe had an interesting run and may have some stuff to talk about. I don't think there's anybody out here who has more to talk about than Dustin Hall. So after they pit, we may try to have a word with the Team Conti driver, or former Team Conti driver. He's now a new team owner of his own team. So everybody making their way down pit road, and of course we'll talk to him after all of that. But the jack stands go up, and let's see how your call about the fueling level plays out here, Andrew. Let's see when the 54 is able to pull out. There goes the left side. Cameron Stone is gonna win the race off pit road. Wow.
Oh, Hutchinson. Yeah, so the 4 guys of Stone, Stout, Long, and Hutchinson. So Long has, through running out the front of the field, it's cost him 2 positions there.
Yes, yeah, that cost him quite a bit. Also, I don't think we're going to be able to have a word with Hall because I don't see him in any of the Discord channels. Oh, yes, I do. We're going to pull him in 1 second. Dustin Hall, you got a copy? You got a copy, Dustin?
Yeah, bud.
Well, Dustin, from the pole to the grass to out of the session to back in the session, You have been, I think, everywhere but the grandstands today. Tell me a little bit about your race. Good talk. Good talk. You there, Dustin?
I think that sums up his
Right.
race.
Yeah, that does sum up his race, I'd say. We'll put him back with his team. I think we might be having some technical difficulties.
Yeah, I think I'm falling out again.
Oh, internet connectivity issues. You got us now, Dustin?
Yeah, I got you. Can you hear me? Am I
Yep,
back?
we got you now. So it sounds like you're having some connectivity issues. Is this a reoccurring thing? What's going on, man? All right, he is continuing to have some issues, so we'll put him back to his chat and hope that the connectivity issues start to kind of ease up for him. That's unfortunate. You know, it seems to be the way. You know, the internet at your house or with your router works perfectly all week long, and then comes race day, and it seems like everything goes awry.
Yeah, look, it hasn't been Dustin's day today, but fingers crossed he can enjoy the third stage and bring home a good result for himself and his team at least.
Yeah, here's hoping. Anytime a race starts out like that, you hope for a little bit of redemption, but I believe he's going to be a free pass. All right, well, we do have a word from Dustin Hall. He couldn't say anything in voice chat, but he did send me a text. He said, "My race has been like McDonald's. I'm loving it." Oh, man. So yeah, at least he's in good humor despite everything that's kind of happened there. But yeah, what a wild night for the pole sitter.
So our third stage is as they assemble up behind the pace car at the moment, Stone and Stout off the first row, followed by our stage 1 and stage 2 winners in Long and Hutchinson. You've got to think that Stone would be looking pretty good here at the moment for a stage 3 and overall race win. As his crew chief pointed out earlier on, they are aiming for to be the leader at lap 325, and at the moment they're in the box seat to achieve that.
And, you know, another thing to think about is we've not seen the 57 in the lead on fresh tires. The only time he's had that clean air all to himself was when he was on about 10 lap older tires. And of course, at that point, it's a little bit difficult to defend, but now it's an equal playing field. We know that pretty much all of these LDR drivers have a long run setup, just as Cameron Stone does. So if he can get out front and hold that lead, we're not really entirely sure what he's capable of. So that'll be fun to see. But the pace car pulls off. The field is in the hands of Cameron Stone for the first time tonight. And he gets a pretty good jump as the LDR boys go side by side for second behind him. Into turn 1, looks like Long is going to get a good advantage and clear into second now. That's probably not what Cam wanted to see in his mirror. He wants these guys to go side by side, and actually they do for third at least, as Hutchinson tries to look to the inside of the 89 and the 97 now trying to side draft the 57. They're going to be door to door for the lead in 3 and 4.
Yeah, so Long looking really good off the restart here, already into the lead, and Stone struggling with that early pace that we expected. He really just has to control that red mist at this point and say, all right, he's got the setup for short runs. He's going to be quicker than me over the first 30 or so, 20 or 30 laps. I really just need to maintain my race strategy and not try to overdrive the car here.
I'd have to agree. I think that's the play to make. We've seen so many long green flag runs tonight that I think patience has become increasingly valuable the longer we've gone green and the less frequent cautions have been. So if these guys can just ride around, conserve their tires, conserve their equipment, and just make sure that they're there on lap 325 like Bryce was talking about, that's going to be the ticket. And we know these guys all have good cars, and they're evenly paced enough that I don't think any of them really have to worry about falling too far back or fading late into the run. They can stay close to each other, and then when it matters, they can start duking it out. But for now, ride around, save your car, and I think that's the play.
Yeah, well, they don't need to worry about. Well, they have one more pit stop to go, but they certainly don't need to worry about the stage end. So they can do their pit stop, and then the final stint of this race is where they can just hammer the car. They can use all the fuel. Still need to be a little bit conservative with the tyres because you need to be competitive right up to lap 325. But these guys really just need to maintain the positions that they're in, Certainly the guys out the front, they just need to maintain where they are until the next pit stop is done, and then it is all on. So when we come down to the final 50 or 60 laps of this race and everyone's done their pit stops, that's when we're going to see guys go all out, and we're going to see a lot more action at that point. So, but for the next 40 or 50 laps, these guys, or certainly 50 laps, these guys just need to maintain and continue to look after their car.
Lucas Hoytsma in that 07, he's been a driver on the rebound, I think. He had some damage earlier in the event. I noticed when I happened to pan past his car, the right side driver door, or right side passenger door, was dented in, as was the right rear quarter panel. But now, after a number of pit stops, they kind of slowly beat that damage out of the car and got it fixed up. And now that that car is in top shape, he's actually running lap times comparative to the leaders. He's running about the exact same lap times. Everybody in this lead pack is running about 30.9 to 30.8 at the fastest, and that is consistently what Hoytsma has been running. He's had a fast car all night long. It just hasn't been in good shape. He had that damage holding him back. He's been kind of marred in traffic. Now, late into this race, it seems like things are starting to fall together for him.
Showing himself to be the quiet achiever too, because he started in 18th position. So for Lucas to start what is essentially midfield, have some damage, have some issues, get them fixed, and now be at the pointy end. And he's done it quietly. He's been the quiet achiever. He's got himself up there. So certainly another racer to watch as we drill down into lap 300 here.
Ralph Hutchinson with a huge dive bomb down low, moving to that white line. He's going to get around Cameron Stone with that overtake. But man, Cam with a big run out of the corner. He actually put the bumper to him just momentarily, but he's able to get into the corner clear and free down to that white line, closing in on his teammate there in the 89. You got to think Hutchinson is pretty antsy to get back out front, because he knows he's got the car that can lead the race, possibly the car to win the race. But ever since that bad pit stop that put him back in traffic, he's just been unable to climb back to that top spot. And over the race, you got to think that anxiety about getting back up front, it just builds over time.
Yeah, and there's that risk of overdriving the car again as well that he's facing. But just behind, I noticed too, just behind Hoytsma, or now in front of him, is Kyle Amlin, who started in 24th. And has moved his way up. Medeiros, who started in 22nd and has also moved himself up through the field as this race has gone on. So a couple of other drivers there to keep an eye on as we get towards the end of this race. So they've obviously got really good race cars and have been able to make up position.
And it's worth noting about Ammon as well. He was a lap down at one point, and he's now back on the lead lap inside the top 10. So another impressive recovery, and that's the beauty of these longer races. You know, sometimes things seem pretty bad, feels like you're down and out, but if you just stick with it, sometimes the cards fall in your favor and you can get back up there. He's now battling side by side with that 81 machine, Ryan Samuelson, for P7. Samuelson on the high line, trying to make it work, and almost for a minute, I think Ryan Ducon contemplated making it 3 wide. We haven't seen a whole lot of 3 wide racing today, barring lap traffic, but you got to think these guys have a handful with 2 wide. 3 wide, maybe a little bit much.
Yeah, I think we're really building up to an exciting finish here, guys, because Samuelson is another one. He started in 38th place and is currently in 8th. So certainly a lot of drivers that have got their cars set up well for race pace here. Perhaps didn't qualify as well, but they've got their cars set up beautifully for race pace and have been able to carve their way through this field throughout the first 228 laps. And with just under 100 laps to go, you would think they're going to continue and really bring it to Long and Hutchinson, who have won stage 1 and 2, currently leading the race. They're going to have some competition coming up behind them. The
keyword of the night you were kind of talking a lot about earlier, Andrew, was red mist. The drivers kind of controlling their tempers. Well, there's some red mist coming out of that 99 machine right now, because I've been listening into the drivers chat, and he just had a bit of a spat with Michael Christopher in that number 70. Michael Christopher is a lap down. He's actually 2 laps down. And I suppose Ryan Ducombe felt as though he was kind of owed the position. Maybe the 70 should kind of move out of the way and let him make the overtake. And the 70, well, he has a good car. He's got good tires under him, and it is his obligation for his team to kind of go out there and get the best finish he can. So he raced the 99 fairly hard. 99 didn't appreciate it, and they kind of went back and forth on the driver radio until an admin came across and said, all right, boys, save it for after the race. Let's calm down. So those 2 drivers get together on the track anytime soon. We may see some sparks flying.
Yeah, well, it's lucky. I guess that's the lucky thing in sim racing is that they don't meet in pit lane after the race. I saw a few incidents with Marcus Ambrose when he was racing in NASCAR over there. He was never backward in coming forward to tell drivers what he thought of them in the pit lane.
Oh yeah, NASCAR drivers, they like to have words after the race. They're no stranger to that. And Marcus was, if he had a problem with somebody, he was not afraid to let him know. He was always fun to watch. Looks like Cameron Stone sliding back into 4th, but not super easily. That 89 machine is proven to be pretty good competition. He's been right on the bumper, trying to get that side draft going, slow him down a little bit. And Ralph Hutchinson up to P2 right in front of them. It's a 3-car battle for second, and while these guys battle it out, the leader, whoa, the 89 loose on the apron. The 57 is going to go around him on the outside. He's bringing the 67 in tow. 67 being piloted by Josh Ward, so that's going to put him up to P4. But while all this is going on, way off in the distance, if you put on your sunglasses and look past the flare, just past the horizon, you're going to see that number 97 car. He has set sail, ladies and gentlemen. 1.6 second lead, now 1.7. He's on rails.
Yeah, he's really driving the wheels off this thing at the moment. And we're 20 laps into this stage, so at some point you've got to wonder whether he is running a short run setup, long run setup. But at 20 laps, you would imagine they're starting to equalise the 2 different setups, and he is really storming away. It's 1.9 seconds now, so making the rest of the field really work to stay with him.
And once Cameron Stone was able to get around the 89, really nothing was between him and the 54, and he is being extremely aggressive, trying to make a move. He's looking down low in 1 and 2, then he gets to 3 and 4, and he's trying to get a run up high, basically putting his car anywhere he needs to try to get an advantage on Hutchinson, get up to second place, and hopefully run down the leader, because that's the thing. If you got a long run setup, and you know that the guy in front of you has a short run setup, well, you got to get ahead of him if you want to make use of your car and take advantage of that. So if he wants to have a chance at running down the leader, he's got to make a move now. Laps are winding down. We're on 235 out of 325, so we are firmly under 100 laps to go. We're closing in on our final, what should be our final pit stop of the race, and really the time for riding, I think, is slowly fading away.
It might be a smart move here for Stone, provided he doesn't get attacked from the rear here by Ward and Stout. Perhaps if he just sits in behind Hutchinson, because it doesn't. Long is still streaking away. It's out to 2.2, nearly 2.3 seconds now, so he's moving away. But we do have a pit stop to go. So if Stone can, if he can stay behind Hutchinson, he can save himself a lot of fuel. Jump him in the pits, and then he's got that final half a stage to run down Long unhindered if he can manage to jump Hutchinson in the pits.
That's definitely a viable option, and I think Cameron has a number of options in front of him, whether it's trying to get the jump in the pits, like you said, or just outright passing him on track. There's a number of things he could do, and I'm sure Bryce is kind of sitting on that pit box right now, running through the calculations, trying to figure out, okay, what do we do? Which of our options is the best? And unfortunately, I don't think even the best crew chief is ever going to know with certainty what option is the best, because racing is just too unpredictable. And it's going to come down to just, again, sticking to a certain strategy and never second guessing. That's the thing. Once you commit to a strategy, you can never bail out halfway, because the damage you do to your momentum and your speed is going to be more detrimental than anything you could do just sticking to a strategy, even if it's not the best.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the only thing you can do is take your best guess at it, and NASCAR teams pay a lot of money to use software that helps them with these best guesses. But still, at the end of the day, it comes down to knowledge and experience and understanding what the other drivers are doing and what the track is doing. And certainly the software they use is purely numbers driven. So these guys at the moment, the crew chief for Stone, would be looking at this and going, well, Long is just streaking away at the moment. We need to get around Hutchinson. We've got the car, we've got the pace, but can we do it without causing any extra use on our tyres and whatnot, or even worse, putting it into the wall? Now, if the risk factor is just too high, then you say, well, let's play the caution race here and save our tyres, save our fuel, and we'll try to jump him in the pits. And then the other strategy, of course, is to say, well, let's throw caution to the wind and let's get him and try to hunt down and Long and reduce that gap as much as possible between now and the next pit stop. Because at the moment, it's 2.5 seconds. So you're not going to make up 2.5 seconds in the pits. The only hope that he can have is to jump Hutchinson.
And speaking of the number 97, I was looking at this car and I'm trying to figure out where this speed came from, because it really seems like it came out of nowhere. All night long, the lead cars have been very similarly paced, very closely matched. This is the first time we've seen anybody get a lead to this extent. So I was thinking, what is the difference between now and when that 97 was kind of stuck in traffic? Well, I pulled up the race info. The track is about 13 degrees cooler now than when we started the race, and it's staying cooler. It's not just that we have cloud cover, it's that the sun itself has started to descend. The air temperature has gone down by a number of degrees, and so as a result, the track itself is cooled. There's a lot more grip now than there was earlier on. And so whereas these LDR cars were really loose earlier on, and we saw them sliding through almost every corner, that slide has gone away. They've gotten a little bit more grip. And I got to wonder if these guys didn't practice and test with a little bit cooler track temps, knowing that as this race went on and as the sun moved and followed along its course, the track would cool down, and they built setups specifically for it.
Yeah, that's a great pickup there, because it's significant now. We're out to 2.6 seconds and he just keeps extending at the moment. He's in a very comfortable position. So great pickup there on the track temperatures, because that's obviously had an effect. It's really been the only thing that's changed. And Long has been able to take advantage of that better than anyone else at the moment.
As they cross the line for lap 244, you got to think these guys are starting to consider strategy. It'll be about lap 260 or so that they'll be able to pit comfortably, that the window will open, and I think we're going to see more of the same. We've never seen in this race a cluster of cars come down pit road all at once. Instead, we've seen cars here and there just peel off one by one, and I think we're going to see the same thing here. But I think the difference is some of the drivers that had short pitted earlier and took that undercut, maybe those drivers take the long run strategy. They run the full tank dry, they stay out a little bit longer. And maybe some of the drivers that stayed out longer before, maybe they try the undercut, just because at this point we're seeing so much separation. You've got to try something. And if you did something before and you're not in the lead now, well, you might as well throw the wrench at it and try something different.
Yeah, you're spot on there. And what this does for Long is it gives him options. So he can say, all right, I'm going to run a longer stint. It's going to sacrifice a bit of time here early on. But I know then that I'm going to have a fast car at the end of the race. Or he can say, well, I'm going to pit early and I'm going to get the undercut, so that when these guys come out after their pit stops, I'm 5 or 6 seconds in front, and I've got myself a great buffer to defend this lead going into the last lap. So really, either way, he can go with those strategies, but it just gives him greater options now because of the lead that he has been able to generate through this stint.
Yeah, the best way to make sure that the drivers behind you can't get you on strategy is just to be so far ahead it doesn't matter. That's exactly what he's doing. He's got such a massive lead. You're right. He could sacrifice a couple of seconds by staying out on track longer than the rest of these guys, and I'm sure he's confident that even if they did get ahead of him on the pit sequence, he knows that car is a rocket ship, especially in clean air. If he's got fresher tires, that's all she wrote. He'd be able to run them back down and maybe get around them. So very comfortable race right now for him. Not so comfortable for Hutchinson and Cameron Stone or Josh Ward. These three drivers have been under a blanket for a long time now. I mean, 10, 15 laps, these guys have been nose to nose, maybe longer. And you can tell the cars are a little bit unsettled compared to the leader. Obviously, this car does not like being in that turbulent air, and they're just kind of making a lot of that for each other. So these guys all want to get up front, I'm sure, but right now, with their current situation, they kind of just have to ride with one another and hope that things start to kind of come together here.
Yeah, it's almost like Hutchinson is playing a rear guard role here for Long. He's certainly holding up Stone, and Stone's not able to get around him at all, not able to even make a move at the moment. So that is allowing Long to get even further and further away as the lead stretches to over 3 seconds now. But Long, who we suspected would have the car set up for the long runs, is not able to make any movement whatsoever on Hutchinson at the moment.
And he's trying everything. I mean, it's not for lack of effort. He's moved high, he's moved low, he's ran the middle of the track, he's entered really close to the bumper of the 54, he's lagged back. I mean, anything there is to try, Cameron Stone has tried. It's just not quite working out, and I think it's just because they're so close in pace that no matter what they do, they're just going to be constantly alongside one another. Here he goes again through 3 and 4. This time he actually manages to stay to the door, but as they get to the start-finish line, that momentum stalled out. He got just a little bit loose, and then he had to fall back in line. And man, the frustration levels in a situation like this where you're trying lap after lap after lap to make an overtake, and it seems like nothing you do comes to fruition. Nothing plays out the way you want it to. You got to think he's getting a little bit antsy behind the wheel.
Yeah, and look, this is what we expected at the start of the race. We didn't think that overtaking would be as easy or as frequent as it has been throughout the first 2 stages. But as we settle in now to the 3rd stage and we get towards the middle part of it, we're seeing what we expected at this track, in that the guys that are trying to overtake are having a really hard time of it.
Yeah, and it could just be that with the track temperature being a little bit cooler and there being more grip, you can't really rely on the car to rotate quite as freely as it did when the track was slick. So whereas these guys had some freedom trying to really send some incredible dive bombs down the bottom and rely on the banking to kind of catch them as they slid, now they've got too much grip to slide around. They got too much grip to throw it into the corner. Whatever angle they take into the corner is pretty much what they're dedicated to, and there's not a whole lot they can do about it. So it's kind of put them in a box now where they have to make more, I would say, traditional overtakes. Instead of being aggressive, it has to be more calculated. They've got to set up their overtakes 1, maybe 2 laps before it actually happens, because, again, they're just being stalled out by the aero, and they don't have enough rotation anymore to compensate for that.
Yeah, well, they have between 10, 20 laps to go in this stint before we start seeing some pit stops happen. So bold predictions. Andre, who's going to be the first one to pull the trigger here? Is Long going to go for the undercut, or is he going to run a longer stint, do you think?
Generally, in this league at least, when I've seen drivers out to a massive lead, they're usually the ones that run the tank dry, just because it gives them that security that if a caution comes out, they will have still been on track and not trapped a lap down on the pits. And because they have such a big gap, it's like we were talking about earlier, he can afford to give up some time. Even if Cameron Stone or Ralph Hutchinson come down pit road before him and they make up some time in the short run due to that, he can very likely afford that time lost. Whereas some of these guys further back, they got nothing to lose. They're not going to get him on raw pace. We've seen that through this stint. So if they could maybe, just maybe, come down pit road a little bit earlier and jump him in the pits and then play some aggressive defense to keep him behind him, that may be their only chance. So I would say, if I was a betting man, that Cameron Stone will be among the first in this lead pack to come down pit road.
Yeah, I think you might be right there. He's certainly got the car set up to run long, so he'll roll the dice, put it into the pits and try and get an undercut, get past Hutchinson so he doesn't have to battle him, and then try to run down Long in the early parts of the next stint.
We got a bit of a battle brewing for the 3rd position as Cameron Stone falls back a little bit further from Hutchinson, Josh Ward has closed in on that bumper, and he is now looking to take a podium position for himself. He gets a good run out of turn 2 all the way down the straightaway. He's carrying that momentum. He's going to peek his nose down low, just get a little bit of clean air if he can, try to stick with that 57. But again, it seems like passing is just getting more and more difficult as the night goes on.
Yeah, and Stone finds himself switching from aggressor mode to defending mode as he tries to hold off Ward now as we barrel down on lap 260 and the pit stops become very close now. So we're not far away from the first car pulling that trigger and heading in.
As the gap continues to extend between Hutchinson and Cameron Stone, a little bit behind this lead pack, we've got a few lap cars that are actually kind of on pace with these guys. Tim Rail is running pretty respectable lap times. He is currently 21st, 5 laps down in that 55 machine. Matthew Gaskins has a lot of damage to the point where you can pretty openly see the fuel cell in the deck lid of that car. His lap times are actually pretty respectable. So just more of these drivers who were kind of involved in these incidents early on, trying to stay out on track, salvage some points. Ryan Samuelson back in 10th. He's continuing to hold on to that top 10 position right behind Sean O'Brien Jr. and Ryan Ducombe. Ryan Ducombe with some substantial damage to that tailgate, kind of got his spoiler up in the air. And I'll tell you what, that is the worst damage to have with this car, especially when you're already running a larger spoiler at this track than what we normally have. Then you get that damage that pushes it up into the air even more so. He's probably not having a good time with that car right now.
I feel like he's driving around with his brakes 10% on with that spoiler up in the air. It's just catching so much more wind and acting like a parachute for him.
Absolutely. Also, just checking in on Dustin Hall. He's currently 27th. He's 22 laps down after being able to rejoin the session. The next car ahead of him is Preston McRae. He's 18 laps down. So he's got a ways to go before he can salvage any more points for that number 1 team. But luckily for him, there's really nowhere to fall back to. Kevin Steele is the car behind him, and he's 56 laps down. So as long as Dustin stays on the track, he's pretty secure in that 27th position finish. And it doesn't sound like much, but when we've got 40 cars starting each and every race, 27th is a fair amount of points. And maybe it's not a win, but it could keep you afloat.
Yeah, still disappointing for him after having the pole and starting out so well, but still good to be able to salvage a finish at least. He's not going home with the DNF.
This is a fun battle to watch right now. I'm keying in on the number 65 and the number 99. As we already talked about, Ryan Ducombe has some damage in that 99, whereas Sean O'Brien Jr., he is pretty much clear of damage. That car is mint, and he's right behind the 99, trying to, it seems like he's trying to follow in the tire tracks. Every time the 99 goes high, so does Sean O'Brien Jr. Every time he goes low, so does the 65. So these guys kind of following with one another, but I know Sean is probably trying to make that move. I mean, I don't know why he'd be content in 9th there when he's got a position right there. You know that guy, seeing that damage on the back of the car, that's like seeing blood in the water. You know he's wounded. You know you can make that pass. And Sean, he's had a pretty good season so far. He's proved himself to have a lot more speed this season than he did last season. And he's been a consistent top 10 contender. So I think when a driver gets that confidence up and they have a string of good runs, that builds the aggression. That builds the confidence to say, all right, I want to get every single point I can get. And I think that's what he's doing tonight.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens over the next few laps. Is he going to push now, or is he going to wait until the pit stops are done and then try to push?
Only time will tell. Is actually Robert Anderson got around the 65, and there is smoke on the tri-oval. We got a car in the wall. That is Lucas Hoytsma in the 07. He was running 6th at the time.
Well, that is unfortunate. He'd had such a good run. Back down into 14th now. So no caution. Race continues on.
iRacing has been fairly lax with the yellow flags. We're going to key into the... No, that's not a replay. Okay, for a minute, I thought it was a replay. We're just tuning into the 57 as he runs currently. He is... Oh, now we're going to go to the 3-wide TV multicam. Replay top of your screen. Just a little loose out of turn 4, and there's that overcorrect.
Yeah.
We've seen it so many times. Just drivers, they counter steer, and it's so hard to change your muscle memory. Back in Gen 6, you had to counter steer. You had to turn right, and that was what you did to correct that car. And now, after years of that, we've gone to a car where you have to just not touch the steering wheel. Like Bryson said, if you start spinning, you don't steer. You keep it straight, you let off the throttle, and hope that the car catches itself. But when you got a car sliding sideways at 170 plus miles an hour, your instinct is not to just leave the steering wheel alone. You want to do something to try to correct it.
Yeah, and it's proven the downfall of a few drivers here tonight. So the few drivers are going to have to head back to practice and retrain that muscle memory to not do that, because it really has ruined the night for a couple of drivers here tonight.
And eventually, I'm sure these guys will get used to this car and the methods that you kind of have to use to save it. It's just, again, you build up 10 plus years of muscle memory, and it's not something you can really change overnight. We're only into the, I believe, 5th race of the season, and we're still pretty early on in this car. There's still a lot that these drivers are learning that they're getting used to, especially at this track, because this is a different aero package. We've had the same package in the first 4 races. Now we come to Atlanta, things are a little bit different. So that just adds another wrench into the mix that these guys got to get used to. But I'm following along with the 57. He's currently running P3, and he is now about a 10th faster a lap than the car ahead, which is Ralph Hutchinson. So he's reeling him back in on this long run, as you would expect to see. And he's running the exact same lap times as our leader, Matthew Long, in that 97. So as expected, Cam is really coming to life. But look at this. We got the 54 down pit road, I believe. Yep. He's going to get that car serviced. So I was wrong. Cam was not the first to pull the trigger. Hutchinson.
So Hutchinson looking to gain an undercut advantage here, and perhaps give himself a bit of a gap over Stone and bring it in on Long. So if we're talking about a second and a half lap difference, then, oh, here we go. Got a Long into the pits as well. So he's not going to get that, he's not going to get that undercut that he was hoping for.
And what a game changer it would be if a caution came out right now with all these drivers taking the undercut. They're hoping that that does not happen. But all these cars getting fresh tires, fresh fuel, and we're going to see who wins the race off pit road. Obviously, 97 should be far and ahead of the 57 as they work their way out. But I also heard on the driver radio, Lucas Hoitzman on the 07, he's going to be pitting, which obviously I don't think he could stay out much longer. His tires from that spin were likely pretty shot. So he's going to get that car serviced, and Cameron Stone out and away. And now we see who played the right strategy, who cycles out ahead.
Yeah, and Hutchinson and Long at the moment hoping and praying that there are no cautions in the next 5 laps, because if, like you said, if we get an incident now, then we've got very down. They're going to find it very hard to come back and get back to the lead. So really, at this point, they're hoping that the next... Is that... No.
That's
are we
the 99. I think it's staying green. Bad night goes to worst. As our producer said, he did not quite make pit road, had to bail out and make that hard right turn, which we've got another car parked in the tri-oval right now. Cameron Stone about to go past him. That is Tanner Marty in the 29 machine. He was right in the path of traffic. It's lucky nobody got involved in that. This pit sequence proving to be a little chaotic.
Yeah, Hutchinson's really dropped down too. He's dropped down into 12th. Long is up in 8th. So I didn't see if there was an issue there, but he's lost a bit of ground.
He may have overshot his pit stall again. I'm not entirely certain, but yeah, Cameron Stone and Long cycling out ahead of him. The gap between Cameron Stone and Matthew Long is about 4 seconds, but the race lead right now belongs to Kyle Ammon. He's inherited it by virtue of staying out, and he is continuing to make laps right now, running that very high line. And I kind of expected this out of Kyle Amon. I was watching him run earlier, and I noticed he was right up against the wall trying to conserve his equipment, which is generally what you're going to do if you're taking a longer strategy. But now he is going to be making his way down pit road, diving it down to the bottom. And that is going to give the lead to Anderson in the 11.
They can't have too many more laps left in them. Matthew Long is only 22 seconds off the lead. You would think that Ammon, Anderson and Samuelson will be in pretty soon. They surely can't run for too much longer. And at that point, Long will breathe a sigh of relief that he was able to get through without any yellows. We're very close, but
they have all made their way down pit road. Sorry to interrupt you there, but they have all made their way down pit road. And up front, we've got the expected running order, Long and Stone, 1-2.
So 4.6 seconds now. So Long has made up about a second through that short stint there while they were all pitting. So he's extended his lead out to almost 5 seconds now.
And that's got to be a very comforting thing. Just look in that mirror, see that 5-second advantage, and to know that you're done pitting. You know, there's no more strategy. There's no more wild cards. From here on out, you just got to hit your marks, keep to your line, hope that everybody else can do the same, hope that there's no yellow flags, and if all of that goes right, we could be looking at the 97 getting a win.
Yeah, it's really his race to lose at this point, unless there is another caution. He's got himself a commanding lead at the moment. Stone, of course, has had his car set up for long runs, so you would probably expect him to lose a bit of ground in these first couple of laps. But then towards the later part, he doesn't have Hutchinson to deal with in front of him anymore. He can maybe start to make some inroads on that lead, but that lead is massive at the moment. You wouldn't call it insurmountable, but it is massive. It's certainly the biggest lead of the night.
And further allowing the 97 to relax as well is just the knowledge that iRacing's automated caution system has been very relaxed tonight. I mean, we've seen multi-car incidents, but because they were deemed as being away from the racing surface, there was no yellow flag. So even if somebody does lose a little bit of car control, runs out of talent, gets sideways, or what have you, we still may not see a caution. So really, the 97's got to be feeling pretty comfortable where he's at right now.
Yeah, and he can't afford to just bury the head down and drive the wheels off this car, even though he has a comfortable lead, and he can certainly drive around hitting his markers, hitting the line that he wants. But if he was to drive the wheels off this thing now and there is a caution, then he could find himself in a whole lot of trouble with cars that have perhaps looked after their tyres a little bit more behind him all of a sudden, right on his bumper.
That is absolutely true. Also, just tuning into the 07 machine, I just scanned over to Lucas Hoitzma, and despite his incident, he's actually currently running 9th, so he was able to stay inside the top 10, which not very often you make a mistake like that and you get to keep a top 10. Bit of a lucky break for Lucas. He's been very, very vigilant this race to make sure that even when he makes a mistake, everything kind of stays in line.
Yeah, very lucky to hold on to a top 10 position, but he's driven well all night. He's certainly been under the radar until that incident occurred and has made up a lot of positions throughout the night. So he has driven well. He's got fantastic race pace and showing it towards the end of it now.
I am baffled as to what happened to Ralph Hutchinson. I don't know if something happened on that pit stop that we missed. Perhaps it was a speeding penalty or something of the like. But not only did he lose a lot of time, like we pointed out earlier, I just checked in. He's now a lap down, and he's not even the first car 1 lap down. He's got Ryan Samuelson about an entire corner ahead of him. That would be the lucky dog should we get a caution. So something disastrous happened to that 54 on the pit stop, and that's heartbreaking because, man, what a night he's had up to that point.
Yeah, it was definitely after the pit stops because they had pitted and he came out and him and Long were very close to each other, and then something happened after that caused him to drop a significant amount of positions, and we missed it on the stream, so I'm not sure what happened there, but yeah, it was definitely after the pit stops.
That's a good point. I forgot he did cycle out with Long, and he Yeah, it had to be something on track. I'm not entirely certain if maybe he had to check up a lot for that car that was parked in the trial earlier, or just got caught up in something. But unfortunate, and now he's just kind of not only hoping for a caution, but he's got to get around Samuelson before any potential caution. And actually, worse news for him is that two more cars have gone a lap down. So now he's got to pass more drivers if he wants that lucky dog, because Ducom and Hoytsma have both been put down a lap by our leader in that 97 machine, as we have, ooh, man, the 97 and the 99 really, really close together on the trial, which I find a little ironic. The 99 was angry at lap cars for racing him hard earlier, and now he's trying to race with the leader.
Yeah, karma? No.
Maybe.
And driving around without a bonnet at the moment too. That's got to be playing hell with his aero package.
Yeah, here in the NASCAR circle, we call that driving a modified. Yeah, I mean, a lot of pace out of that car for all the damage. You're absolutely right about that. It is kind of surprising to see it. And I bet you that 97's smacking that steering wheel thinking, why's he got to be so fast? I just want to get around this lap traffic and go back to hitting my marks. But now I got a mirror full of car, and I got to worry about this guy, upsetting the aero. But again, when you're a lapped car, I said it earlier, you have an obligation to your team and to yourself to get the best finish possible. And yeah, you want to race the leaders clean. You don't want to be the guy that, ends the lead lap car, their night. But at the same time, you're on the track. You've got a right to every position that you can claim. And so you don't necessarily have to roll over. And so when you see the 99 fighting to stay on the lead lap, that is well within the boundaries of this sport and very understandable in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can be a hard racer, but still be respectful of those around you at the same time. No one wants to race against a person that's going to put them into the wall.
Absolutely. I mean, it's respect gained and respect lost. You have to know how everybody is going to race. And over the course of a season, you build up relationships with certain drivers, or you get used to them and you kind of get a sense of, okay, well, this guy's going to do this, that guy's going to do that. And for the first few seasons in this league, really, we had the same roster every season, and everybody knew each other really well. But this season, things really seem to take off. We have a lot more entries, a lot of new faces to the league, and as we progress through the season, everybody's going to get more used to each other. But here on lap 5, I think there's still a lot of unknowns and a lot of faces in the crowd that maybe these guys don't recognize.
We get to the pointy end of the field here, pointy end of the race here. Long still with a commanding lead, in excess of 7 seconds now over Stone. And Stone is 6 seconds clear of Ward. So the front end of the field has really spread out. Stout is a further 7 seconds to the rear of Ward. And then it's 5 seconds back to Durham. So our front 5 have really spread out, but Durham and Kyle Amon are engaged in a battle at the moment. Those guys are right on each other, and they're the first battle we have.
Side by side for position, and as we follow along with Damaris Hickenbottom in the 00, that's a driver who he is rolling proof that you just don't give up, man. He is P14, very respectable position, and just through pretty much sheer willpower and just steering clear of all the chaos, he's got himself quite a few points tonight there in that 00 after a rough start to the season. So it's nice to see a bit of a turning point here for that team, and finally a good run, which I'm sure will build up the confidence. And I think these drivers are going to need all the confidence they can get. I mean, next week we're going to Dakota, which is not only a road course, which these drivers sometimes dread, but one of the most difficult road courses on the schedule. I mean, the elevation changes, the hairpin turns, the chicanes. There is not a section of that track that I would describe as easy. So if these drivers can have a good run tonight, maybe build up some confidence and a points cushion, that may do wonders going forward.
Yeah, you'd love to swap your NASCAR for a GT3 car for that track, wouldn't you?
Wouldn't you, though? Get that big old spoiler up in the air, or wing. I guess they run wings, not spoilers, and get that mechanical grip. And yeah, that'd be far better. I think these guys would agree. I mean, you heard what Bryson Hicksonbaugh said about this car. You know, it's supposed to be a better road car. You look at this thing, and really, it is almost a sister car to an Australian V8 car. It's got the mechanical grip. It's got the diffuser. It's kind of got the transmission built for road courses. But in the simulator, we don't always have the exact same handling and the exact same mechanics that you see in real life. And it seems as though in sim we have a bit of an issue with the brakes and a few other things that make this car a little bit subpar on road courses, whereas in real life they're expected to excel.
Yeah, if you're changing a car from a 4-speed to a 5-speed, it doesn't matter really what track you're on. You would expect the car to be better. And it's the same thing if you're going from a 5-speed to a 6-speed. It's once again going to be even better again, because that closer range transmission is going to give you better acceleration, better top end. It's just going to make the car better in every aspect. So it surprises me that it took NASCAR so long to go from get out of their 4-speed, but like we said earlier, that the old faithful of NASCAR would have been very happy to stick with 4-speed for as long as NASCAR are going around.
Absolutely, and I'm really curious to see what this 5-speed transmission does for tracks like Martinsville. I always found the gearing ratios for Martinsville very fascinating. It's the shortest track on the NASCAR circuit, and shifting down to third gear was too low of a gear. It bogged down too much. So what they had to do was they had to gear fourth gear, their final drive, to be pretty much on the rev limiter at speeds as slow as 120, 130 miles an hour. Now they have 5 years. They've got a little bit more to work with. And I would expect at some short tracks, you may see them shifting down into third in the corners because they've got that control. They've got that sort of gearing range that they just didn't have before.
Yeah, it's one of the racing series that's gaining in popularity and traction in Australia at the moment. And I understand you guys have it in the States as well, the TA2 cars. Which are the Trans Am 2. They're basically a mini NASCAR, but they're all running 4-speed H pattern box here at the moment. Big tyres, big engines, and they're just a really basic, simple race car. So although our lead championship is run with 6-speed gearboxes, certainly one of the most popular racing categories in Australia at the moment are running the 4-speed H pattern.
Yeah, and maybe a lot of that just comes from how much more difficult the car is to drive. You just don't have, like you said, you don't have that acceleration. You don't have as much control over what gears you're going to run. It kind of limits your options in terms of ratio and final drive. And I think from a spectator perspective, having the cars hard to drive and having the drivers be limited in their options sometimes puts on a better show. But again, it's like we were talking about earlier in the broadcast. It's that eternal debate between, should we make the cars as technologically advanced as we can and make them as comfortable to drive as we can with as much control as possible? Or should we put the drivers in bricks with wheels and let the driver behind the wheel sort it out?
Yeah, absolutely. And you've got to weigh up between what the drivers want and what the fans want. And what the fans want is action. They want door-to-door action, nose-to-tail, wheel-to-wheel. They want to see overtaking. They want to see drivers correcting. They want to see action. But as a driver, what you want is the most capable and best car that you can put on a track. And those two points of view don't always see eye to eye.
Indeed, it's always a fun argument because it really you can see both sides of it. It's one of those things that even if you feel one way or the other, you lean one way or the other, you can always see where the other side's coming from, and that's one of the fun things about motorsports and just how different the cars all are. I mean, every discipline is just so vastly different, and every car is so vastly different. And in terms of oval racing especially, it takes so little to completely change how the racing is and how the car feels. I mean, one little aerodynamic change, one little track change or something of that sort, and you might be looking at a totally different product. So it's pretty fascinating. But up front, the grid has not changed. We still got Matthew Long in the lead. He's up to a 9-second gap over Cameron Stone. And actually, Josh Ward is slowly closing in on Cameron Stone, little by little, lap after lap. And behind Josh Ward, you've got Taylor Stapp 7 seconds behind Ward. Kyle Hammond running P5 at the moment. This has been a standout run for Kyle. He's been really up in the fray, proven himself to be a formidable foe for these guys. And you don't always see that 5 up front. But again, as these seasons progress, these drivers learn so much from one another, and they learn so much about the car, and you see drivers just slowly improve. And Kyle Hammond has been on the march. He's been improving every week, and this is kind of the culmination of that, seeing him up in the top 5.
Yeah, he's really been the driver of the night at the moment. Certainly pushing his way up from way down in the field early on, from 24th all the way up to 5th. He's made massive inroads on these leaders and has shown fantastic race pace. So all he needs is a caution now, and look, he could be looking at a podium.
And Dustin Hall's no good, very bad, awful race gets worse. He's disconnected again.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah, this has not been Dustin's night. I don't think I've seen a night go this wrong for a driver in quite some time.
So after racing for hours, practicing for hours, doing the setup, he's going to walk away with no points.
Yeah, and after joining back in already once, just everything he's been through, but he might be able to rejoin, and he actually, if he can get in soon enough, I'm looking at the scoring and timing, he was 25 laps down when he disconnected. The next car behind is Kevin Steele. He was 57 laps down, so he's got about 27 laps to try to get into the, 22 laps to try to get into the session and maybe salvage those points that he had where he was running there in he was P27. So maybe he can get back in. We'll see. Maybe he's going to throw his hands. I would throw my hands up in the air at that point. I'd say, all right, I've tried. I've tried to run this race. Something in the universe is telling me no.
Well, he was able to get back in 3 minutes last time, so fingers crossed he can still salvage some points and get back in just as quickly.
Here's hoping. Following along with Ralph Hutchinson now, he has not made up any positions since whatever misfortune befell him. He's still in 12th. Lucas Hoytsma is the next car ahead, and I can't see the exact interval, but it is about half of the tri-oval between them. So very large gap. I would estimate about 6 to 7 seconds, and they're at risk of going another lap down before too long. So unfortunate for those drivers as Cameron Stone works his way around some more lap traffic. He's continuing to, actually, I was going to say he's continuing to fall back, but looking at the timing and scoring, it's actually kind of plateaued at about 9 seconds between Long and Cameron Stone. It has not gotten any longer, and the gap has not shortened any. So pretty much stabilized there, and I think the only thing that's really going to throw a wrench into this is if we were to get a late race caution. The window for that is closing as we are on lap 308 out of 325. We are really in the final stretch here.
Yeah, and if we were racing at Dakota, and you said half a second a lap is what he needs to make up on Long, then you would say that's doable. But certainly at Atlanta, it's hard to imagine him making any kind of ground here on Long. So certainly Long's race to lose at this point. And he really just needs to drive around, keep it on the black stuff, and he's got himself a win.
Agreed, and bad news for the rest of the competition versus Matthew Long. If Matthew Long's car likes a cooler track, well, it went down another degree since we last looked at it. It was 95, now it's 94. So track's getting cooler. That's just more and more within the wheelhouse of that 97, and everything seems to be really going his way. A lot of lap traffic for the number 57. Cameron Stone's going to have to try to navigate Mason Lowry, who is his teammate, so I'd assume he's not going to give him too much trouble, as well as the 38, Brandon Pierce. That's another teammate to the 57. And then the 54, who is not a teammate to Cameron Stone, but going almost a lap down to Cameron Stone and not really being on pace right now. I can't imagine he's going to put up much of a struggle. Meanwhile, we got a bit of a scuffle going on. I just noticed the 99 and the 65 kind of got a little sideways coming out of the corner. I'm not sure if they just got loose independent of one another. I think they might have. But yeah, a lot of these drivers starting to feel the cars get away from them.
Yeah, I just noticed the shadows as we're seeing now too. Earlier on in the race, they were casting over about half the track on that corner, and they're now covering the entire track. So I would imagine that that's certainly helping to reduce the track temperatures. for Long and anyone else who has their car set up for that run.
Cameron Stone working his way around the bottom of his teammate, Brandon Pierce, trying to navigate some more lap traffic. Bottom of the screen is your leader, Matthew Long. He's still out at about 9.3 seconds. That's kind of where it's remained for the last few laps, and lap traffic not proving to be quite as scary to navigate here at Atlanta. That's kind of one of the nice things is this track is, or at least it used to be in this form, fairly wide, fairly navigatable. Whereas like last week when we were at Phoenix, that track's a little bit more difficult to get around the traffic just because it's very one line. Nobody really wants to put their car up in the marbles to let anybody go because they kind of risk spinning out for themselves. So lap traffic has been really, really easy going so far tonight, which is kind of a rarity in stock car racing, and I'm sure these guys are glad to see it.
Yeah, well, all but the top 6 have been lapped now, and Anderson and Kyle Hammond in 5th and 6th. They're not far off being the next victims for Matthew Long. So we could end up having all bar the top 4 or 5 down a lap here.
That could be. I mean, we've seen races in this league where pretty much only the lead lap car was the leader. I mean, we've seen the entire field go a lap down. We've seen some pretty big intervals. You get these longer races, and especially these long green flag stints where no cautions come out to bunch them back up. And it really allows the drivers that are shining to shine and allows them to get out to a massive lead. And for the 97, this race has just gone perfectly. It's not very often you see a race at Atlanta where the cars are so hard to drive with this few cautions. But in those rare instances where the race does go green, that allows drivers like the 97 to really show what he can do.
So 11 laps to go, Andre. Are you prepared to make a bold prediction now on the podium for this race, perhaps?
Well, I don't think my prediction is going to be all that bold. I think the podium may wind up being what it is right now.
But yeah, Matthew Long has certainly run a fantastic race here through not only this stage, but through getting stage 2 win. And now we'll back it up with a stage 3 and overall race win. It's been the Matthew Long show here for half the race.
Yeah, ever since that sun started to descend, the track cooled down. It was, I mean, night and day. No pun intended for that 97. The car didn't quite seem to be the one to beat. It seemed like his teammate Ralph Hutchinson actually had a better machine underneath of him. But man, once that sun started to go down, that 97 came to life, and he has never looked back. Cameron Stone still 9.4 seconds back, so not really gaining or losing, even still, as we approach lap 318 this time. Josh Ward falling back from Cameron Stone a little bit. It looked as though he may actually get to Cameron by the end of the race if he continued on the pace he had about 10 laps ago, but that pace has fallen away from him here. Kyle Hammond still holding on to 5th, and Robert Anderson still 6th, but like you had pointed out, both those drivers are kind of at risk of going another lap down by the end of this thing, although they may be able to squeak by on the lead lap. We don't have too many laps remaining, and they got about 2 corners between themselves and the leader, which is quite a gap, even if the leader is lapping multiple tenths faster.
I think we'll call Matthew Long the vampire from now on. Because, when the sun goes down is when he comes to life. So that'll be his nickname going forth, vampire.
There we go. Gap remaining the same that time by. It was Cameron Stone 9. Whoa, we got a car on the wall. Jack Durham. He just gave a little love tap the outside wall, making sure it was still there, calibrating it. But he was able to gather it up and get back on track. No caution, which I'm sure he was close enough. I think the leader might have saw that in his mirror, and he's probably thinking, whew, thank goodness.
Yeah, thanking his lucky stars there. I tell you what, Long really needs to go and buy himself a lottery ticket here today, because if he hasn't used up all his luck, it's definitely on his side at the moment.
Oh, yeah. And I'm going to knock on wood for that because you don't want to give him the commentator's curse. But you're right. It's been a very fortunate run. We've seen a lot of drivers have their nights just fall apart at the threads on numerous occasions tonight. But for the 97, things have just fallen into place and everything's gone perfect. So as he works his way through 1 and 2, we're on lap 321. We've only got about 4.5 laps remaining as he makes his way down the backstretch. And no lap traffic to speak of. I mean, he's got a ways to go before he reaches anybody. So from here to the checkered, it should be clear sailing. For the cars behind him, largely the same story. A lot of these guys have pretty much finished navigating lap. Well, I say that, but actually Cameron Stone has just gotten involved in a group of cars here that he's going to work his way through. But really no rush to get through them. The next car back, again, is about 7 or 8 seconds behind him. So he can take his time, take it easy. At this point, he knows he's probably not going to get the 97 on speed. So get through the traffic, keep the car clean, and make sure you're there at the end.
Yeah, and look, Long has eased off over the last lap or two. He's taking a much more cautious approach now, and that gap is coming down to Stone. It's not coming down anywhere near the rate that will make a difference to the race result, but clearly Long taking his foot off a little bit and decided to be a bit more cautious towards the end of this race with only 3 to go.
Yeah, it's always a good feeling on an oval circuit to look at the scoring and timing and say, well, even if the guy behind me was a second and a half faster per lap, which is an absolutely absurd rate of speed, he still wouldn't catch me before the end of it. So he knows that he can take it easy, coast his way through the corners, not take any unnecessary risks, and just try to limp it there. 324 out of 325. We're at 2 to go. Again, a part of him slowing the car down may just be that he doesn't want to get involved in lap traffic. You know, he's comfortable where he is. He's got nobody around him. If he pushed the car, maybe he catches up to those guys in the distance, but he takes it easy. The cars behind won't catch him. He won't catch the cars in front of him. And he's pretty much got the track all to himself, rolling through 3 and 4. He's going to come to the stripe for the white flag. Gap remaining about 8.9 seconds. Josh Ward still holding on to third, but it's one more time around for the lockdown racing driver of Matthew Long. And the sun just beginning to set. And I'm sure his heart rate's starting to go up a little bit. He's getting excited because he knows that he hasn't won yet, but he knows he's won.
And just on a personal note, as a Ford fan, I'm really happy to see this result.
Pretty fond of the Fords myself. It's pretty nice to see a Mustang get in victory lane, and he does. Matthew Long is going to win the... well, there was actually a name for this race that Kevin had come up with that was inaccurate. It was the Fresh Pavement 500, I believe, but we didn't get Fresh Pavement. They didn't resurface it, so that's why we haven't really talked about the name of the race. It's the Atlanta 500 now. But Matthew Long taking the win for LBR. That team has been so strong all year long. Cameron Stone finishing second, Ward walking down third, Stout bringing it home fourth, and Kyle Lamon with an impressive breakout P5. And oh boy, they may be wrecking to the line.
And Hutchinson getting up for 8th position there too. So he's made up a couple of positions in the last few laps.
Yeah, it's always nice to salvage a few points there. I wasn't sure how far up the grid he could get there, but yeah, unfortunate that he wasn't able to contend for the win at the end there. But either way, he got himself a stage win, a lot of points out of that 54 machine. So on the next week, while his teammate 97 is going to burn it to the ground
for the ceremonial smoking of the tires.
And we do
lay some rubber down.
Oh yeah, they don't need that engine next week. They're switching to a road course engine. They're tearing it down anyway. He can bring a roller back to the shop.
So Matthew Long with the win, Cameron Stone in second, Josh Ward in third, followed by Stout, Hammond, Anderson, Durham, Hutchison getting up for a decent result there, Ducombe, O'Brien Jr., Hoytsma, Samuelson, Medeiros, Hickenbottom, Mike Christopher in for 15th, Pierce for 16th, Lowry, Mush, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, Mushay, here we go. Marty, Rail, Senna, Bird, Acerenza. How's that for a crack? Princeton, no Gaskins, McRae, Hall, Steele, and then Drumhiller, Mobley, Hicksonbar, Gibson, Duke, Giglio, Root, Taylor, Edwards, and Benefield. and a few more. Tracy and Knoll.
And that is going to round out our field. We're going to line up some post-race interviews with the top three. I'm sure a lot of these drivers are going to have quite a bit to say. It was kind of an eventful race all around. Very up and down. A lot of cautions, a lot of green flag stints. Kind of best of both worlds. But right now, just trying to locate these drivers in Discord, and we'll get to them when we can.
Yeah, a few cautions early on, but then as the drivers settled in, it really became a green flag run all the way to the checkered flag for part of this race. But once they'd settled in after the first flurry of yellows, it was really just tight racing, and it wasn't till the end there where those front runners were able to gap out from the rest of the field and really take this race by the throat.
All right, we're going to have a word with Josh Ward, our third place finisher. Let's bring him up, see what he's got to say. Josh Ward, you got a copy? You got a copy, Josh?
Yes, sir.
Josh, that was one heck of a run. Very consistent. I mean, no mistakes made on your end. And it seemed like once the sun started to go down a little bit and those track temps dropped, your car really came to life. Tell me about your race.
Oh, that car was on rails that last day. I went in on the stage 2 caution, did a little bit too much of an adjustment, but it was to tighten me up, and it helped me stay sucked on the cam. But eventually, it just started getting too tight. I even had to end up trail braking it. Once we came in for green flags, I went halfway back on that adjustment. It was glued to the track, no complaints. It was the best car I'd had all night, and it was actually able to run in the middle because it was tight enough for me. So, it was great. I love this track.
Yeah, it sounds like you had a great time out there, and I gotta imagine that's gotta boost the confidence a little bit going forward in the season, right?
Oh yeah, you know, had a Grinch saw the Christmas and his heart swelled 3 sizes or something. That's my head right now.
All right. Well, how about next week, man? We're going to a road course, Coda. What do you think of that?
I can't turn right to save my life.
Well, I mean, you turned left pretty well. I think you'll figure it out.
Hey, what was it?
Yeah, our producer is right. There's more left turns on that road course than there is right. So.
Yeah, but the right ones, I'm gonna completely gut.
Well, Josh, we congratulate you on the podium. Again, sounds like you had a blast out there. Is there anybody that you would like to shout out or thank?
First, my girlfriend, she helped me do a pit stop because my legs was hurting from this long race. Second, Edge Setup Shop, they, I was running theirs. I'm a driver with them, and if you want to set up that you can trust, go to Edge. That's, yeah. And then Ward Record Service, they ain't on the car, but that's, this paint job was made a little bit before the race. Didn't quite have time to get everybody on there, but, yep, I believe that's it.
All right. Well, Josh, congratulations again, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, Josh Ward out of the booth, and now I'm going to hand Cameron Stone, our second place finisher, over to Andrew.
Cameron, you got a copy?
Yes, sir.
Right, fantastic race there, and obviously had your car set up for long runs and showed great race pace throughout all sectors of this race. Mate, tell us about your race and how you feel it went.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head with that one. We had a really good long run car. Felt like we really missed on the setup this week. The car didn't handle all that great, but I mean, it did save tires pretty well. So, yeah, after about 25 laps in a run, I feel like I could have ran with about anybody, but the pace and the time that you lose over the first 25 laps is really hard to make up, especially with you know, the way the aero packages work and everything. A guy can, you know, be 2/10 slower than you, but if he takes your line in the corners, nothing you can do about it. So
and through that second stage there, you were following Bryson Hicksonbow around towards the end of it. Mate, were you was he slowing you up there, or were you doing everything you could to stay with him?
With Matt and Bryson at the front, I mean, those guys were basically just pulling me around. I was using the draft to keep up with them. So those two were definitely not slowing me up. Whenever I got into a battle with the other LDR guys, Stout and Hutchinson, I mean, I feel like we played pretty nice, but the issue was, you know, first 20 laps they'd get around me, and then after the tire wear kicked in. I was faster, and I just couldn't do anything to get around them. But luckily, those guys made some mistakes towards the end, and we were able to get a P2 out of it.
Yeah, great result, mate. It was a pleasure to watch you guys run around door to door, wheel to wheel, and barely touching, and complete respectful racing, but hard at it at the same time. So well done on a great result.
Thank you, sir.
All right, and Cam, before we let you go, is there anybody that you would like to shout out or thank?
Definitely gotta shout out all the guys that work on the setups. I know we kind of missed on it this week, but you know, those guys at Triad, Brandon Pierce, Jeff Souza, who else was making stuff this week? Carl Dodson had a lot to do with the car we ran tonight, so shout out to those guys. Shout out to a new sponsor we had on the car, Cookout. Think I'm gonna go get me a tray. I need something after tonight. At 500-mile races ain't no joke. Shout out to the teammates. Everybody kind of had a tough night. That's kind of been our MO for the season, other than last week. But shout out to Mason and Brandon for toughing it out and getting us some points there. RJ was having engine troubles, so he pretty much had to quit. Thanks to Mom and Pops watching the race. I know you guys are watching. Give it all I had. We tried. We'll get a win, you know, sometime. I don't know when. Anybody else that's watching that can't remember right now because I'm so tired, appreciate y'all. Appreciate you guys up there in the booth. I listened to, you know, what Andrew was here for last week, and you guys got some really good chemistry up there, so looking forward to seeing some more of those broadcasts going forward. Yeah, that's about it.
All right, well, thanks for your time, Cam. Good luck next week.
Thanks, sir.
Now it's time to have a word with our race winner, Matthew Long. Let's bring him up. Matt Long, you got a copy?
Yes, sir.
Well, Matt, it was a great performance, not only from you, but from your team as a whole. I mean, LDR has just proven to be the cars to beat all season long, and tonight was no different. Your car in particular, though, man, once that sun went down, it was like you turned on the rocket boosters, the track temp cooled off, you pulled away from the competition. Was your setup really built for that sort of cooler track temp, or was that just kind of a happy accident?
No, it actually was. So I started out the race probably wrecking loose, and you know, through our testing as the track rubbered up, and we knew it was going to cool down a little bit. You know, she came right in, and yeah, I didn't really have to adjust on it too much. I made a little bit of an air pressure adjustment for the stage 3, and that's all it really needed. It was hooked up for sure.
It absolutely was dialed. I mean, you were glued to that bottom line. Nobody really had anything for you. The speed was incredible. Now, next week, we're going to the Circuit of the Americas, a road course. What is the preparation like going into a road course? It's going to be the first one of the year. LDR has been one of the most organized and I would say well-prepared teams, I think, so far this year at every track. What are you guys doing to prepare for a road course?
Well, I think with Coda, you know, yeah, setup helps, and we'll certainly, you know, put laps in for that, but it really laps for the driver at Coda. I know, you know, I got new pedals before the season, and this will be the first road course on them. So just doing a lot of laps to, you know, get consistent with this league and the long races. You know, one mistake can really mess up your day, even at a road course like that. So, you know, I think it's just going to be a lot of practice, a lot of laps, and then probably not as much importance on the setup next week.
All right. Well, before we let you go, is there anybody that you would like to shout out or thank?
Yeah, definitely. I want to thank certainly my teammate Taylor Stout. Me and him put a lot of work in on the setup this week, and he's kind of the mastermind behind it all. So it was a great car. You know, want to thank Ralph, and I know John couldn't be here too, for being awesome teammates. Want to thank my sponsors, Executive Barbers in Swanee, Georgia, and Mo Larry Twitch Stream for being on the car. And my mom as well. She supported me this year. And then all my friends and family out there watching. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, congratulations on the win, and good luck next week, Matt.
Thanks, y'all. Appreciate it.
That is the race winner out of the booth. And with that, that's pretty much going to conclude our post-race coverage for the Atlanta 500. Andrew, it was a very interesting race. We had 5 cautions for 20 laps of pacing, but they all came at once. They were all clustered together, and then after that, it was just green flag run after green flag run. And these drivers were really able to settle it, I would say, with skill rather than, the luck of having to rack them and stack them.
Yeah, certainly the adage of cautions breed cautions was true here again. And once the drivers did settle down, we had some great racing. And interesting to hear that Matt Long said that they actually did set the car up for those cool attempts. So certainly not a happy accident at all. It was a premeditated strategy on their part, and really does show that they were happy to sacrifice early on pace for the overall win. So happy to lose the battle, but to win the war.
And it really was a high risk, high reward strategy to do that, because as he said, he was wrecking loose at the start of the race. And so basically he was putting all of his eggs in the long run basket, saying, I'm going to be the fastest car at the end of the race, but I'm going to have one of the worst cars at the beginning, and I got to survive to get to the end. And it was a high risk because any number of things could have gone wrong, but that whole team, Matt Long, Taylor Stout, Ralph Hutchinson, they all did a phenomenal job tonight, and I would say that risk paid off. And I'm excited to see the road course racing next week. I'm a sucker for road courses. They're some of my favorite races on the schedule, and it's going to be fun, absolutely. But that's going to do it for us here at 3 Wide TV. Thank you all for tuning in. We will catch you next week at COTA.